All right. All right. Want to welcome you all to the recap of the biblical definition of sin. We have Matt So Real and our brother Sam, and we're going to be discussing uh, the debate. We're also going to be bringing forth, taking a look at the Jews, Israelites, and Gentiles. And we're just going to be chopping it up, man. We're reaching out to a few other brothers, some of our Christian brothers, to join in on our conversation. So if any of you brothers tuning in that we've been reaching out to, y'all let us know. We'll try to bring you on. But for those that don't know, my name is Jeremiah Yah. Please say the Yah of the House of the Redeemed Servant of the Torah Law Enforcement, Masharah Yashala, Banya Yashala, Office of Accountability, doing work in the Hebrew Israelite community, working towards the restoration of the children of Israel. And, we want to dispel all of these rumors and stereotypes that have been plaguing our people. Brothers, people demonizing us because of a certain level of militancy from some of our brothers. But as each and every one of you, whether you be Christian, Muslim, or any walk of faith, and someone of your faith does something outside of your faith, you don't want that to be a representation of who you are. So we want to deal with that, man. These things are important, man. You can't blame other people for the actions of a few. We want to dispel that, man. And there's a propaganda. There's a history of propaganda that the world is familiar with. I was talking with my brother Sam, and he was talking about what went on in Japan before the bombing of Hiroshima, how there were flyers that were being released upon the community in Hiroshima, demonizing and trying to justify their attack on Hiroshima. You see the same thing with the so-called Holocaust in Germany. There was propaganda and a campaign that went out against the so-called Jews in Germany. And this is a familiar practice that is being practiced upon us now. And we just want to dispel that, man, because that's not what we're about. We're not about killing anyone. We're not about promoting mass terrorism. We're against those things. One of our commandments in the Bible is thou shalt not kill. We believe in keeping the law, right? So thou shalt not commit murder, man. That's what we believe. You understand? So all this old radical nonsense and putting us on terrorist list because we are telling the truth is something that is very familiar in the Bible and something that our Savior Christ and the disciples dealt with, being imprisoned falsely, right? So these things are important, man. So we're gonna have a biblical discussion tonight, man. And I want to allow the brothers to introduce themselves. Matt? You're on mute. You're on mute, Matt. Can you hear me, Matt? All right, go ahead, Sam. The floor is yours.
Oh shoot.
Here. There you go, Matt. You there?
Yeah.
You back on mute. Can't hear you, Matt. Sam, you there?
Yeah, I'm here, bro. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead and introduce yourself, man.
All right. Peace to the brother Yah, brother Matt that's on here as well, to all the viewers that are watching currently and those that will see this discussion. Bring you peace and greetings from the Defender of the Way Ministries, and hopefully we'll have a good and peaceful and prosperous discussion tonight.
That's right. Matt, are you back?
Yeah, I'm back. I'm here. Hey. Okay, yeah, introduce myself.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, well, just peace. What's going on, everybody? Happy early Christmas Eve to all. Matt Solly, aka So Real. I'm just blessed to be a part of the panel, you know what I mean? Peace to the host, peace to Sam, peace to the listening audience. And I just wanted to say that I definitely did just enjoy the dialogue. I enjoyed some of the thoughts that we were given just in the back, just from last night. And I'm just going to be really, I really do get a lot of things I do want to share in a recap. And, and above all, I'm just open. And I hope that, we can all just have a real, honest discussion about, just things that are on our heart and what we believe. And let's just walk through the scriptures and see, if it's there. Let's see if we can find what we believe.
Yeah. That's great, man. That's great. Let's see if we can find what we believe. That's exactly right, man. These things are important. You understand? So we have had a few conversations in the back chat with one another. So I kind of want to kick things off with the recap. The biblical definition of sin. I thought that the brothers did a great job. A lot of you brothers and sisters were supporting and sharing the video, and very interactive in the video. Over 500 comments, over 1,000 plus views. Brothers and sisters was in and out of the discussion the entire time, and I thought the brothers did a great job. I have my own views concerning the definition of sin. What is the biblical definition of sin? And Matt, I want to give you an opportunity because Sam called you out in regards to the ambiguity concerning sin, and it's as if it is left up to interpretation what sin is. If we use a ambiguous term such as, you know, we're just going to do what's right. Are we going to do what's good? Well, right and good have to be defined, because when you go worldwide throughout a multitude of different cultures, you have things that people do that is right in their mind, but it's not right according to the Bible. You understand? Such as homosexuality. You understand? So, which is something that is detriment to any community growth, because you don't have the ability to procreate with that lifestyle, right? Naturally. So if you could expound on why is it not defined definitively, and why is there so much room for interpretation concerning it when the Bible has definitive, concrete, as our brother Sam was saying the other night, definitive points of behavior that the Most High wants from his followers, right? From his people. So would you like to speak on that a little bit?
Sure. I don't mind speaking on it at all. I think a lot of things that I'm going to say are going to be things that you're probably already going to be thinking. If not, you've already thought of yourself as you were even speaking, just depending on, how rich you are and just the things that you've seen in the word. What I'm about to say really isn't over a top of anyone's head. It's not hard to understand. It's not anything deep. It's just really basic. And that is, I had said numerous times in the debate, no matter how many times I've said it, Sam just continued to say his propaganda. And what I said that sin was, I just quoted 1 John 5:17, all unrighteousness is sin. That's what, John said. If you think that's ambiguous, well, then all of a sudden it's like, well, I guess what you're saying that John is saying is ambiguous. Then after that, I quoted James saying, if one knows to do right and he does wrong, to him it is sin. He doesn't limit that to any kind of Israelite at all. Even if you could say, oh, verse 1 says he's talking to the 12 tribes scattered abroad, but what he's saying applies to just anybody. Or else Romans 3, for how could God judge the world? So that's another thing. There's people that know to do right and they do wrong. I've shown that with Romans chapter 2, how, people have a conscience and a mind that convicts them or excuses them of their actions and decisions and behavior. Like, where are they getting that from? The moral law. They know to do right and wrong. I went to Genesis chapter 2, where it shows, or not chapter 2, I think it was chapter 4, where it shows how Cain killed Abel. No one told him that murdering was a bad thing. No one told him it was a good thing, but yet he did it, and he knew it was wrong, and God pretty much based on him for it. He never said, that, oh no, you're doing something that I never told you that was right or wrong to do. No, he spoke to him as if he already knew that killing was wrong. So another issue is that you said that, it's ambiguous. It seems like there are things that are wrong in America, but they're not wrong in Africa or Japan. This is something that Sam said last night, and I skipped it on purpose because I want to talk about it now. The issue is with that is, what about what God thinks? So what if we go to another country and they end up saying something that goes completely against what we know God would deem as sin? So why even bring up what one person thinks in Guatemala versus another person thinks in Japan? And I'm sitting here like, well, aren't we all Christians? Aren't we all supposed to think about what God thinks is wrong. One example is Jesus said, hey, the Pharisees sit on the seat of Moses, do everything that they say, but just don't do as they do. Then after that, you read in Acts chapter 5, Peter and John and the disciples are told by the Pharisees, by the Sanhedrin, which included Pharisees. You know, I've studied it for myself. I know this. They said, look, don't preach the name of Jesus ever again. Like, they told them not to do that. What did they say? They said, you know what? We'd rather fear God than man. If anyone remembers what Jesus told them, he said, look, you got to do what the Pharisees say. But Jesus never said, oh, there's one exception. If they say anything against what I told, he never even said that. So why is Peter actually like doing that? In a legalistic mindset, people would think, oh, he's going against Jesus because he's not doing what they said. But like common sense, which is the faculty of our conscience and our minds, which tells us what's right and wrong, will tell you what's right and wrong in that. Like, he didn't need Jesus to be exhaustive in saying, oh, by the way, he didn't even need that. So I think sin works the same way. It really does. So that's why I said that.
Again, that's still the same thing. You understand? Like, that's still the same thing. You're still leaving it up to man opinion instead of the Most High's opinion. So you said righteousness, but what is righteousness according to the Bible?
Okay, so let me pause you there. How did I end up leaving it up to man if I just got done saying, hey, who cares about what people in Japan think versus what people in Guatemala think versus what people in Kenya think what's right and wrong, when I end up saying, hey, it doesn't matter where we are on the planet, shouldn't we be concerned about what God thinks? So how in the world am I leaving that up to man? And my own example shows that we should not even be thinking about what man thinks, but no matter where we are on the earth, we should be thinking about what God thinks. Now, if I had that example, how are you saying I'm still like this man-centered kind of thing? Like, that doesn't make sense.
Okay, well, let me ask you directly.
I'll ask it. So about righteousness. So you asked me about righteousness, so I'm going to answer you about righteousness. So when you look of what righteousness actually means, and I've read this last night. You know, if you want me to read this again, you already know what I'm about to read. I just went to Matthew chapter 5, and I looked at the Greek word for righteousness, and I read it. And so I'm going to go ahead and read it again. All right. So this is the Greek word for righteousness, and this is basically what it says here. Matthew 5:20, and put this right here. Let's give it a second. Sometimes the eSword is free. Okay, here we go. All right, and click over here. Very good. All right. Strong's word, righteousness, click. Okay, and here is the word for righteousness. Okay, here it is. All right, sorry it takes my computer a little time to load. So righteousness is the Greek word dikaiosune, and it just basically means, in a broad sense, a state of him who is as he ought to be, righteous, the condition acceptable to God, the doctrine concerning the way in which man may attain a state approved of God, integrity, virtue, purity of life, rightness, correctness of thinking, feeling, and acting. In a narrower sense, justice or the virtue which gives each his due. And so that is basically what the word righteousness means, you know, according to the Thayer's Greek. And of course, there's a whole bunch of scriptures that shows how that word is used and what the apostles are explaining what righteousness is, according to how to use it.
Definitive.
Hello?
Is that a definitive answer?
Exactly.
Yes, yes, it is. Now, if you say that it's not, then just simply ask me for how you want my answer to be answered. For example, if you want me to say, give me a scripture that explains righteousness, then I'll go ahead to some scriptures that explain righteousness. Like, we can continue to dig if you're not satisfied.
All right. Yeah, let's do it, man. I I want to let Sam jump in here. Go ahead, Sam.
Okay.
Right. Now, what we're hearing is an abstract definition, which means it's vague. It's very vague and is left up to the interpretation of the individual, as Brother Yah said from the beginning. And this is the problem when you deal with the Greek language. This is the problem. The Greek language is very abstract, and which is contrasted with the Hebrew. Now, see, what he just read is some Thayers was a European theologian, scholar, or what have you. What he just read was his opinion of what righteous is, which has no bearing on, really no bearing, or very little bearing, because it has some bearing. It helps us get some understanding, but very little bearing on really defining what righteous is and what righteousness is concretely. In order to find out the biblical definition of righteous, we have to use the process of hermeneutics. And what that requires is us to understand in exegesis, which means getting into the mind of the people that wrote this and the people that was listening to this, because they weren't reading Thayer's. They weren't there when Thayer wrote his abstract definition. So in order for us to determine what righteousness means, we have to put ourselves in the mindset of those first century Hebrews. This is the point that I keep trying to get the brother to understand. Doesn't matter with Thayer's, doesn't matter with Unger's, doesn't matter with Vines, doesn't matter with what these modern day folk their vague abstract definitions of these words are. In order for us to truly define these words, we have to get into how the first century Hebrews that wrote this book and that heard the words or read the words of the writings in this book, how they would have understood these terms to mean.
All right, I don't want to go. I want him to kind of respond right there, and we can kind of go back and forth. Matt, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can I respond?
Yes, sir. Go ahead, brother. Okay,
thank you. I'm glad that Sam actually brought that up, because this is something that I did want to touch on as well. I probably said this before, and I'll say it again. A lot of what Sam says, based on my research, it's come really literally straight out of the mouth of the Hebrew Roots movement. I remember years ago, I was just doing some research on, just Greek and Hebrew language. And of course, that's what I ran into as well, that, you have plenty of articles, PDFs, YouTube videos, all kind of things that you'll see where people actually show that the Greek is abstract and the Hebrew is concrete. And they have some very great information. I think the problem is that because of their Hebrew roots bias, they draw the wrong conclusion. And the conclusion is that what? If you really want to understand what the writers of the New Testament were really talking about, you have to go ahead straight to the concrete Hebrew. And that's just a one-dimensional way of talking about all this stuff in the New Testament, or i.e. righteousness. Because when you look in the Hebrew, there are idioms, there are metaphors, there's hyperboles, there are all kinds of things that you see that, that by the time we're done looking at all this stuff, Sam would just say, oh, that's abstract. But that's all in the prophets, especially hyperbole. So that's just in the Hebrew. And also, when you look at the Greek, you start to see that the way that they even use the Greek is in a concrete way. And I guess that's because of their Hebrew culture. So even though, there is this bias in the Hebrew roots against Greek, what do you do when Jesus and the apostles, just constantly read from the Greek Septuagint? What do you do when the Jews themselves translated their own works and writings into Greek from Hebrew? What do you do? No one had an issue with expressing the faith. No one ever said,
Listen, if you don't mind, we're dealing. Let's just look at the word righteousness right now.
Okay, great.
All right. You
so
did a great job of defining what righteousness is, but for me, as I am listening to you,
yeah,
it's still for me it is not, for instance, here's what's concrete. Don't go outside till I get home from work. Okay?
Yeah.
That's concrete. I can understand that. It's not, it's clear, right?
Mm-hmm.
Don't eat shellfish. That's directly straight. It's not, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or what's ambiguous is when I say, well, don't eat certain kinds of food.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
That leaves room for speculation. If I say,
Right.
hey, brother, just do what's good. Okay, well, what does that actually mean?
Right.
Problem. That's the problem. So if we could get more of concrete direction of, listen, do not do this.
Yeah.
That's what we want, and that's what we need as a people. That way it can cut down on confusion. So I know exactly what the Most High wants from me. Right?
Got it. So, sure, yeah. I definitely wholeheartedly agree. So I guess my response to that is, how about we just go ahead and go to a few scriptures and look at the word righteousness? Like, let's just see how they're actually using these words. And, so let's go ahead and do that.
Yeah, because, okay, so while we're doing this, we want to define, I want to hear from you, then I want to hear from Sam, whether or not what we're reading is concrete or abstract. Can we do that, brother?
Yeah, we can definitely do that. Yeah.
All right, let's go.
Okay, so let me see. So right here, I'm going to go ahead and click on just a random scripture that just has the word righteousness in it, okay? I'm just going to go to, let's see. How about just Acts 10:35,
Acts 10:35, let's go.
Yeah. And again, like I said, this is totally random, okay? So we're digging. This means that we got plenty to dig. Some may be great, some may not be great, okay? Right here, it says this. It says, but in every nation, he that feareth him and worketh righteousness is accepted with him. Now, obviously, this is something that Peter ended up saying to Cornelius. Now, if I were to go ahead and say that in the midst of spreading the gospel and talking about the gospel, automatically, you would probably say, well, that sounds very vague, which begs the question, would you say that Peter is being vague when he says works righteousness?
Can I answer that?
Sure.
Yes. Peter was dealing with folk who understood the concept.
Mm-hmm.
If you look in that context, see, we got to deal with the context, bro. That's what I keep trying to explain to you. Peter was dealing with folk that understood the concrete principle that righteousness means doing those things which are in the law. So he didn't need to go through a whole, you know what? Let me explain to you what righteousness is. He didn't need to do that because he was dealing with folks, both Hebrew and Gentiles, both of them. Because the book of Acts tell you that the Gentiles were in the temple, in the synagogues on the Sabbath day, learning the law of Moses. So the law given to Moses. I don't even like to use that term, the law of Moses, because it's the law of the Elohim, whom you guys call God. So the folk that Peter would have been speaking to would have understood exactly what he meant. How do we know that? Because Peter himself was a law keeper. He was still keeping the Mosaic law.
Got it. So, so I definitely do agree with that. To a large extent, when Peter was talking, most of the time people understood what he meant because they already had this idea of what it is. So then I would just say two things. One, let me say something real quick. And two, I'm going to go ahead and try to go to another verse. One, I definitely do agree that there's nothing wrong with saying an example of like what righteousness is. For example, if I say righteousness is when you end up waking up and praying every day and you end up feeding someone who has no food, and you say that's what righteousness is. The problem with that is that even though that's an example, if you try to make that a definitive definition, then all of a sudden you'll have all these other things that people are doing that are not that. But nevertheless, you would look at that and say, no, let me finish. But all of a sudden, you would look at other things that people are doing, right? That are not like feeding the poor and things like that. But there are other things that you would also call righteous. Well, now all of a sudden, we have to add to our examples. So this is a reason why when you have a definition that just says you're doing that which is right or that which pleases the Lord, that's the reason why that one definition right there covers all those concrete examples that you keep asking for. Because if you end up limiting your definition to an example, then it begs the question, well, what about other people that do other things that you would consider good, but they're not that example? Are you going to say that that's not righteous? So while there's nothing wrong with the way that you want a definition, I think there needs to be a balance between an example and a definition. So there's nothing wrong with being, having like a definition that speaks of overall generality. There's nothing wrong with that. I think there's something wrong with it when you begin to call something that's not righteous. I think that's the issue.
But wouldn't that fall under the commandments of love your neighbor as you love yourself?
There it is. Like that. There it is, right there. Like if I were to say that, we all would agree. Like, okay, yes, that's righteous. But if I were to go and use your concept or your logic of, okay, break down what that means. Well, now all of a sudden, we're going to limit that to a certain action. And that what does that mean? Does that mean other actions aren't loving your neighbor as yourself because I'm not doing that specific concrete thing? So I think that's the issue when you push that type of definitional kind of way a little too harshly. I think that's the reason why it's too hard. But you're doing that because you have this idea that what I'm doing is vague and Greek vagueology, and it's really not at all, Well,
no, man, look, here's the thing, right? And I definitely want us to be able to go back and forth. So please don't take offense if I jump in. It's not to, we're not debating. We're just dialogue. I don't mean no harm. So I just want to catch certain points that you're bringing out. So even with the statement, right? Even with the statement. And Sam, I want to know what you think about this as well. Even with the statement, love your neighbor as you love yourself, that is vague. That is vague, brother. And so when you said about waking up, feeding someone, that actually has a name. That action has a name. It's called charity. You understand what I'm saying? So when I say charity, then that's concrete. You know exactly what I mean when I say, hey, we went downtown in our city and we gave charity. You're going to know exactly what that is. I don't have to tell you whether or not we gave out sandwiches or we gave out coats or we, you know what I mean? The act of us going downtown and giving something is called charity.
So I see two things. Either one or two things going on. Either one, you and I are agreeing right now, like 100% without you even knowing it, or hear me out, or you're killing your own argument. Now, how is it that you could possibly be killing your own argument? Because you just right now said, hey, love thy neighbor as thyself is vague. Now, Jesus said that, the Jews end up having that in their law. So we have to say, what? Is Jesus being vague? Is God himself being vague? The Jews that wrote that law, are they all being vague? Is everyone just being vague? Because you just said that was vague. But at the same time, you're saying that if I went downtown and fed everybody, we would not only call that love your neighbor as yourself, we would call that charity. Why? Because you and I have an understanding. That's what you just said. And I'm like, yo, that's exactly what I've been just trying to say the whole time. Okay, so it sounds like we're agreeing.
Can I respond?
Sure.
I want to respond to that. First and foremost, the language carries the Hebrew language that Hamashiach, whom you call the Christ, it created pictures, concrete pictures in the minds of the individuals. So actually, Yeshua was not saying love your neighbor as you love yourself. He wasn't saying, do good and using all these terms. He was using the concrete Hebrew words, right? He was speaking concrete Hebrew words that was understood to the folk who had those words around for thousands of years, who had been taught these concepts and precepts from their parents and their parents' parents and their parents' parents, being passed down from generation to generation. So no, it wouldn't have been vague. It's translated into the Greek as being vague, but no, it wouldn't have been vague when Hamashiach would have said it. That's number one. Real quick, number two, both Hamashiach and his Talmudim, the apostles, they actually defined what love means. First John chapter number 5, I believe somewhere around number 2 or 3 or 4 or all three of those verses actually tells you what love is. It didn't
let me read it for you, because we don't want to deal with ambiguity.
Right. Right, bro. Right.
So give me chapter and verse again, Salah.
First John chapter number 5, bro.
Got you. Chapter 5 and 1.
Yeah, you can actually start at verse 1. It's gonna
Okay.
go through like verse 4 or somewhere.
First John 5. All right, Matt's back. All right.
Yeah, sorry
All right,
about that. I don't know what happened. I did give G-Con a link just now.
Oh, okay, come. All right, so Brother Sam he quoted the scripture, and I said, let's actually read the scripture, Matt, so we don't deal with ambiguity.
Right.
All right. So First John 5 and 1. Whosoever believeth that Hamashiach Yahushua, Jesus Christ, is born of the Most High God, and everyone that loveth him, that begotteth love, that begotteth loveth him, also that is begotten of him. Verse 2. By this we know that we love the children of God, when we love God and keep his commandments. Want me to read on?
Yeah. You can go ahead, because I think it's verse 4. For this is the love of the Elohim. I was trying to pull it up.
Yeah, this is verse 3. For this is the love of the Elohim, God, that we keep his commandments, and his commandments are not grievous.
Right. So now what I'm saying here is John, the law keeper John, the Torah keeping John, is talking to folks that are familiar, have been trained up in the way, which is keeping Torah, and Gentiles who have been taught to keep Torah. He's given a definitive definition of what love is. He's not just saying if you wake up in the morning and you feel like giving somebody a bowl of cereal, sharing your bowl of cereal with someone, then that's what love is, or he's telling you exactly how to love. You know why? And what he said, the commandments. If you go back to Torah, it tells you, if you see your brother's ox, he that hateth you, your brother that hateth you, and you see his ox or his ass go astray, or you see it in a ditch, go get it. So it gives you specifics of how to actually love your brother. Didn't leave it. He didn't leave it. He said, don't hold a grudge against the children of Yasharal, against the children of Israel. There are specifics there. He didn't leave it up for you to determine what love is, because some folk think love is I've dealt with some females that think you don't love them unless you beaten them. Somebody then screwed them up somewhere and then abused them, and you got to tell them, listen, man, I'm not the one. If that's your version of love, then you got to go find that somewhere else. To be beaten on you and all of that other kind of stuff. And mixing that with intimacy and choking you out, putting a belt around your neck and and taking you to the point of death, some folks actually think that is love. So now
Right.
when you tell them to love, they can get that screwed up. If there was not a definitive uh, uh, outline of what love is, and we find that in Torah. But when we get to the Christian doctrine, oh, it's just if you know to do good. Well, what is good? Like bro said, it's a term of relativity. It is abstract. We know what's good by doing that which is written. And this is why John said, for this is the love. Why did he have to explain this? Why did John have to go into this and give some concrete that loving the Most High is keeping his commandments? You love the Most High and you love your brother by keeping the commandments. You know why? Because the commandments tell you exactly how to love the Most High, and it tells you exactly how to love your brother. Doesn't leave it up for interpretation.
Right. And this is real quick. This is First John. This is Second John's chapter 1, verse. We'll read 4, 5, and 6 really quickly. Right. I rejoice greatly that I found of thy children walking in truth, as we have received a commandment from the Father. Not from Moses, not from the children of Israel, but from the Father. Verse 5. And now I beseech thee, lady, not as though I write a new commandment unto thee, but that which we had from the beginning, that we love one another. Verse 6, and this is love, that we walk after his commandments. This is the commandment, that as ye have heard from the beginning, ye should walk in it. You want to respond, Matt?
Yeah, sure, I definitely do. The first thing I wanted to say is I'm going to go ahead and try to respond to everything you responded to with bringing it back to our original hunt and search, which is we're supposed to be looking at righteousness, not commandments and not love. But first, let me respond to it, and I'll try to reel it back.
Well, this was a response to your statement about love. So
no, I definitely got that. Trust me, I definitely got that. I'm just saying that when
to change anything, bro.
Yeah, I know you're not. I know you're not. I'm just saying that when it was Sam's turn to go ahead and pick a scripture about righteousness, he chose to do this instead. But I know he's probably just responding to me, but that's okay.
Yeah, well, we're talking, man.
Right,
Right. So I want to say real quick, your example, right? No, just real quick. I just want to say, so your example that you gave, and you basically said, well, look, I'm going to give you an example about how love is. And you said it's not anything that's vague, how the Christians say things are vague. You said, look, it says this is love and that we should keep his commandments. And then after that, you said, well, look in the Old Testament, they gave an example about, making sure that if you see your brother who's in a ditch, you're supposed to go ahead and get him out or something like that. That's what you're supposed to do, and that's love. So it's funny that was an example, just like my example was about just feeding the poor. So both of us are giving examples, and both of us are talking about love. Now, I think it's funny that this goes back to what? Love your neighbor as yourself. So we would agree that we both read from love your neighbor as yourself. The difference is that Sam picked an example and I picked an example that were not the same, but yet it abided under that same law of what? Loving your neighbor as yourself is what? Whether you're feeding the poor or whether you're actually pulling someone out of a ditch. Now, the second thing I wanted to say about that is that when we're talking about examples, I want to kind of pull it back here to one example that just popped in mind right now, because we're talking about righteousness. Is there example of righteousness? And I find that this one is a bit interesting and sensitive. If you actually go to Matthew chapter 25, We all know that Jesus gives this thing about a final judgment. And one thing that he says is he basically talks about how he has the sheep on his right and the goats on his left. And he basically says, he says to the sheep, come on, come to the kingdom that I prepared for you. Why? Because when I was hungry, you gave me food. When I was thirsty, you gave me drink. When I was a stranger, you took me in. When I was naked, you clothed me. And when I was sick, you visited me. And when I was in prison, you came to me. And then shall the righteous answer him. Now, time out. Jesus was talking to people who were the sheep. But Matthew is saying that these sheep he's calling these sheep righteous. This is what he's saying. And these sheep are saying, look, Lord, when did we ever do this stuff to you? We did this to plenty of people. When did we do this to you? Because we don't remember doing this to you. And Jesus said what? When you do this to a stranger, when you do this to them, you do this to me. And so if you want an example of righteousness, that would be what? There's plenty of examples. You find a need and you meet it. And Jesus gave plenty of examples. Now, that doesn't mean that if you are doing something that is not in this list, all of a sudden you're not doing righteousness. You're reading into the thing too hard. So this is an example. And so if we could look at all those examples and then look back at what the definition was for Thayer's, I guarantee you we could probably find somewhere Thayer's definition is matching the examples of what Jesus is saying. So matter of fact, here it is. This is the example of Thayer's definition of righteousness, the Kaiosune, in definition 1-B. It's integrity, virtue, purity of life, rightness, correctness of thinking, feeling, and acting. Look at that. You know what I mean? Or in a broader sense, a state of him who is as he ought to be.
What does that mean?
Acceptable to God. So all of your actions are showing that.
I'm saying, what does that mean? To be as you ought to be. What is that? What is that? How should you be? You see?
Crickets.
All right, time out. Okay, I'll answer since he doesn't know. No. I'll answer since he doesn't know. Now, this is what I would. No. This is what I would say. The answer to that is the first scripture that came to mind right now is, "Be ye holy, for I am holy."
How does it mean to be holy?
There you go.
Got it.
What does it mean to be holy?
All right, let me go to another scripture. Jesus, or actually James said, yeah, I got you. I'm going to give you an example of holiness. This comes from James. This is James, okay? Chapter 1, and I believe it is verse 27. All right, because once again, we have a commandment, but now we need an example. So check this out. This is what it says here for James 1:26 and 27. It says, "If any man among you seem to be religious and bridleth not his tongue, but deceiveth his own heart, this man's religion is vain. Pure religion and undefiled before God and the Father is this: to visit the fatherless and widow in their affliction, and to keep himself unspotted from the world." So when you're living your life and you're finding a need and you're meeting it, you're gonna make sure that that you're unspotted.
Bro,
you continue to do these holy activities.
I want to comment to that. That's not what holy means, bro. And this is why that vague stuff is and that abstract and that abstract stuff, for lack of a better term here, doesn't fly, bro. Holy means separated, bro. That's what it means, separated. When he said keep yourself unspotted from the world,
Can I
finish?
There it is. We agree. Sure. I'm just saying that we agree. There it is.
But we're asking you for definitive definitions, and you giving us a bunch of vague and abstract stuff. And that text does not even deal with really that one verse, that one part of the text did, where it says keeping yourself spotted from the world. But how do you keep yourself spotted from the world would have been the next question. And then you'd have gave us another vague answer. And then we'd have asked you what that is. And then you'd have got, and so this is the
Okay, so there's an issue. There's an issue. You're making a wrong assumption on there.
Let me finish.
All right, let him finish, man. Then
Okay.
you come.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll let him finish, and then he'll respond. I'll respond. Go ahead.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Now,
no problem.
also with the text in John, you didn't deal with the keeping the commandments at all. You jumped right into the example. What the concrete definition of love is obedience to the commandments. That's the concrete definition of loving the Elohim and loving your neighbor. You jumped all over that and said, well, he gave us a similar example, and his example was similar to mine. No, actually it wasn't. I gave you a concrete, then I gave you an example of what's in that concrete, because it's a bunch of stuff in that concrete. How you had, when you gleaned your fields, you had to leave a certain portion of your field for the poor and the homeless and stuff like that. You couldn't just clean your whole field out when you were harvesting your food and your fruit. So it's a whole plethora of things that's within those commandments. Now, I'm going to let you guys respond, but I got some text too that I want to go directly to Hamashiach himself, whom you guys call the Christ, and see if he defined righteousness as the same way that's in the Tanakh, that's in the Old Testament. So that's what I want to do, and that's where we should be starting from. We're starting from Thayers and Ungers and Vines and all of these folks. They have their place, but I would like to deal with what the Christ himself said and taught, because we're supposed to be followers of the Christ, right? We're supposed to follow what he did and what he taught according to his teachings. We're not Thayers and not all these other folk. We're supposed to follow what he taught. So I have a few scriptures there that I want to deal with, but I'll go ahead and let you respond if that's cool with brother. But I just wanted to make a note that there go brother LP there too.
Yo, it's LP. If you watching, man, send me a message. We want to get you on with us, bro.
Yeah. So
bring you on, LP.
Okay.
Right. So I just wanted to make a note how you're going from one vague concept to another, and you're never really answering the question. We actually, what holy is, you take us to a scripture that's to a Bible verse, a precept in the Brit Hadassah, the New Testament, which says keeping yourself unspotted from the world. That's another vague definition. How do you keep yourself unspotted from the world? Do you wash up with soap every day? Is that what keeping you unspotted from the world? That's not giving us a definition. When we talk about holy, kodesh, which is the word kodesh, the Hebrew word kodesh, it means to make a separation, to cleave. It's like to actually cut a line. And so that's what we're dealing with, sweetie. I gotta call you back, sis. I'll call you back. I'm live.
Yeah, hey, and Matt, I want to give you the floor, and I want to know: do you feel or do you agree with these particular terms that are being used? Would you say that they are vague? The floor is yours.
All right, thank you. But before I respond, I'm gonna need you as a host and also Sam to follow something here. But before we could continue, there's something that has to stop being done. How can I say this? What I try to do when I talk with people, I try to make sure that I'm not attacking them to death, to the point where I begin to not really deal with or address the stuff that they're saying, because I'm too busy trying to demonize it. what we're going to do is we're going to try our best to go ahead and simply just deal with what we're trying to say to each other, and to try to point out the flaws instead of demonizing each other to death. One thing that I noticed that Sam did, I noticed that Sam actually tripped over himself. If you actually rewind the tape, he actually begins to bolster James 1:27 as a part of his own definition of holiness and things. But then at the same time, he ended up stepping on it by saying, well, you know what, this is vague. And he didn't even realize that he did it. And then after that, he made an assumption that if he were to ask me what that means, I would just give him another vague answer, and a vague, which goes to show that he doesn't even know that. You would actually have to go ahead and test me to see. I've given examples, and he has said, well, Matt, and here's another area where he actually stepped on himself. He said, well, Matt, you know what? You just said that you gave something that was an example concrete, and you said I gave an example of something that was concrete, and from there you said we were saying the same thing, and then he said, well, no, bro, we're actually not, because what you actually said was just another vague thing, and you didn't even know it yet. But yet at the same time, now all of a sudden you're calling the examples and scriptures themselves in Matthew 25 and everything else vague by saying that what I gave in my examples were vague. So why is he doing this? Is he doing this on purpose? I don't think so. I just think that if you are so one-dimensionally charged at just trying to just demonize someone, just trying to say that they're wrong, then you're gonna misrepresent what they say. You're going to say stuff that they didn't even say. You're going to twist everything that they say. And that's because you're so preoccupied with just saying you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. We have to stop doing that. Now that I laid that out, I like to respond to what Sam said.
Let me respond to that.
You definitely respond when I'm done to respond to what you said about love and the commandments and things like that. So let me respond to.
No, because you about to.
I listened to what you said, and I bit my tongue extremely hard. So I'm trying to be faster than you.
Well,
okay, so anyway, so let me address what he said.
Wait, Matt. Wait. Everybody, wait. It is the things that you just accused him of. You also do it, Matt.
He just did it. That's what he was just doing while he was saying that. And that's my whole point. I did not do that. What I said.
You're saying that I demonized you.
You just cut me off.
I'm asking you. Are you saying that I demonized you?
Let me finish.
Just answer the question. Are you saying that I demonized you?
Matt, don't tell me how to answer the question. I'm
not telling you how. I'm asking you.
I'm gonna wait for you.
Are you demonizing me?
I'm about to.
I'm demonizing you.
Okay, now here's what you did, dude. I didn't demonize you. What I said was your statements are vague, and that wasn't an assumption. That's what you did. I was making a note of what you actually did. The brother asked you what was holy, right? He asked you a question before that, and you said something about holy. Then he asked you holy, and you go to another text, which is vague. Yes, James is vague. And you know what else? The whole New Testament is vague for the most part, because it's written in the abstract, vague Greek language. So wow. This is the point. This is the point that I was making, and I'm not sure how you're not getting this. This is why we take that Greek language and go back to the Paleo Hebrew concrete concepts, so that we can get an understanding because of the language. So now 10 seconds and I'll be done. What you actually did was false accuse me of attacking you, which I did not do. What I said to you was that your statement was vague, and then you proceeded to attack me to distract from the issues like you always do.
Okay, and pause just right there. Now this is a snapshot. Okay, now I ended up giving an example of how you literally ended up going to James just like I did, and you can rewind the tape. You actually did this. You read it and you use it as a part of your example of holy. And then after that, once you realize that you did that, you immediately like started to go against it and say, well, you know, this is really not good enough because Matt, I would ask you, what does this mean? And you would continue to be vague. So that's the part where you stepped on yourself. And I said, it was in that action that I saw you do repeatedly that I said, okay, he's trying to demonize me. So I'm not saying this. I'm not saying this in the sense that Sam is simply trying to demonize me by just demonizing me. No, I actually gave you an example as a why, which is when you're actually inconsistent with your own argument and you don't realize it, that lets me know that your focus is somewhere else. Where is it at? It's obviously not in the conversation. It's to demonize. So what I was trying to say was I'll say one last thing. Honest, I'll say one last thing. I think really the misunderstanding is coming from is that there is a difference between a definition and an example. And no matter how many examples that I give, they're being, basically said that they're vague. And the issue is, if an example is vague, then I could just say, well, your example is vague as well. If I went to James and James give you an example and he says, this is pure religion and undefiled before God, when you visit the fatherless and the widows in their affliction, that's either an example, that's a command, but whatever Sam thinks it is, he looked at all that and said, oh, that's vague. And also he just now ended up saying that James is vague and the whole New Testament is vague. Yeah. Wow. So I guess what do you have I don't know how you would do that, because that would mean that the things that Jesus said was vague, but yet we're supposed to be going into the things that Jesus taught. So do you see how he is contradicting and stepping over his own argument? This is the reason why I'm saying in that context that he's pressing too hard to simply just demonize. This is the reason why I'm saying that. I'm not saying it to be mean. I'm not saying it to be vindictive.
Okay. Let me, because you're taking us way off again. So now,
but do you see what I'm saying? I'm making sense.
No, you're actually not making sense, because
just show somewhere where I would. Am I wrong?
I'm about to do it. If you hush up for a second, dude, you keep
go ahead.
Okay. Now here's what I said to you. I said you go from one vague thing to another. Let me say this slow, so maybe you'll understand it. I said you go from one vague concept to another when we're asking you to define. We never asked you for an example. That's what you're not even realizing. We're asking you to define holy, to define righteous, and you're giving us vague examples. I don't know.
Pause right there. Time out. No. Pause right there. No. Let's pause right there. Take it out. No. We're getting somewhere. We're getting somewhere. No, bro. We're going back and let's deal with it right there.
Sam, watch this, man. Let Matt jump in real quick, man.
Yeah. Let me, because it's okay, Sam. I'm not okay. Anyway,
I'm about to drop off if you keep cutting me off, dude.
Bruh, I'm not cutting you off. We're getting somewhere.
No.
Anyway, Sam. So Sam, what you just said right there, Sam.
I'm gonna let you right back in, Sam. Please believe me, brother. We'll let you right back in.
I wasn't even finished, dude.
Sam. This is
how we get off. You letting this dude.
Sam, this is not Sam. Okay, Sam. You just said something like this.
This will be your last time. You do it again.
Yeah, I'm sure it will be. Yeah, but the Sam, we're getting somewhere. And even the host knows. Yeah, yes, we are. Anyway, Sam. So you said something, right? You said,
Matt, wait.
Okay.
So I'm letting this go on because hopefully you said something that sparked something with the brother. And I want this thing to be fair, and I want you to be able to get your point out, Sam. So don't think that as well. So I'm going to come right back to you. Matt, you got 30 seconds.
Got it. Thank you so much. He just said a hot point. I wanted to say that he said, okay, everything that I've been giving, he said, I want a definition. And therefore, when I gave a definition, He ended up saying, no. What does that mean? He ended up saying, can you give us an example of something that means? And yet I gave examples. I went to Matthew 25. When I was hungry, you fed me. Like, that's an example. When I was thirsty, you gave me to drink. That's an example. James 1:27, to visit the fatherless and the widow. That's an example. I could go more and more and more into more of these examples that are there. But he says that the whole New Testament is vague. He says James is vague. If the whole New Testament is vague, that would mean that Jesus is himself is being vague. And so that's the issue, Sam. Do you see that?
No, I don't see that, because I just told you Yeshua spoke in concrete Hebrew. So that's what the Bible says. He wasn't speaking your Koine Greek language, and he certainly wasn't speaking your English.
What about his examples in Matthew 25? Were those examples?
Dude, can you mute this dude?
Hold up. You got 2 minutes, Sam. Go ahead.
Okay. Go ahead. I'm going on mute. Go ahead, Sam. Just go ahead.
Yeah, because I'm not going to deal with this dude keep jumping in like a fool. The Bible says that he that answereth for matter before he heareth it, it is a folly unto him. So, and this dude just keep doing it, dude. When you showing him up. Now, what he did, like I said, is when we ask you to define. That's why the whole topic of the debate and this discussion is the biblical definition. The biblical definition. Not abstract examples. And yes, when I said what I first said to you, I said, bro, we asked you for definitives and you gave us abstract examples. Then you went to James and gave us another abstract example. And then what I said to you was the only semi-concrete, I said you didn't even deal with holiness at all. It was only a small portion in there that vaguely mentioned holiness, which was keeping yourself spotted from the world. That's what I said. So now what you're doing is gaslighting. This is called a term called gaslighting and projection. So you're gaslighting and you're projecting your behavior on me. So that's not what I'm doing. I'm dealing with your arguments. Anyone that's following this conversation will see that we keep asking you for concrete stuff and you keep getting vague and jumping from one vague concept and idea to another. So that's not attacking you. It's attacking your argument. And then
Okay, Sam. The issue is...
You got 20 seconds, Matt.
Yeah, okay. That's what I'm talking.
Okay, go ahead.
He's totally unruly and I can't deal with him. This is why I don't like to deal with this dude. So you jump from one vague thing to another and you keep interrupting and all of that. The spirit of the prophet is subject to the prophet. The fruit that you're bearing is representative of your religion. Now, from this point on, can you deal with concrete stuff? Give us a concrete definition of sin and righteousness. And I'm going to deal with Hamashiach. Finally, in 5 seconds, Hamashiach did not speak your Greek, nor did he speak your English. He spoke concrete Hebrew.
All right. So now, we gotta have some order in this. I tried to let things kind of flow naturally, but it didn't work. All right. So I'm gonna give you brothers 2 minutes talk time, but I also want to engage in this conversation myself. And if you brothers don't mind, you understand. But my thing is that because I had asked you and I gave an example of something, an example of something that is concrete is don't go outside till I come home from work. That's concrete. Don't eat certain types of food. That's abstract. You understand? I'm not really saying anything, but when you go into the text and you find examples of certain aspects of righteousness, you understand? It's not defining what righteousness is. For me to just give an example of righteousness, as you have done by saying feeding the poor. Well, feeding the poor, helping the less fortunate, there's a concrete term for that. It's called charity. You understand? So that's concrete. We know exactly what that is. So when we're looking at the term righteousness, holy. When we're looking at these particular terms, there has to be a definitive meaning for those terms. There has to be a definitive meaning, and then you get a multitude of examples that show examples of it. I could be giving charity by giving somebody some wisdom. Hey, don't turn down that street. There's a roadblock. You understand? Hey, here's $5 on your gas. These are examples, but the act itself has to be defined. Matt, the floor is yours. You got 2 minutes.
Thank you. What you just did was you basically just sounded like me. One thing that is not going to work with you, Sam, is it's not enough for you for everyone to go ahead and hear a question that you have. And then no matter what kind of answer that people give you, it's not going to, like, the crowd is not going to be convinced when you just say, all right, well, nope, you're wrong. Or, you know what, that was an abstract example, end quote. That's what you said like numerous times. Like, no matter what I do, you're just going to go ahead and downplay it. Like that is not how you end up showing how someone is wrong. You just can't downplay and say, well, oh, that's all abstract. Oh, well, the example you gave was abstract. Blah, blah, blah. That's not how you end up having conversations, Sam. So also, when you do that, once again, you're stepping on even what the host said. He ended up saying, look, here's an example of righteousness. He said, look, is when you go and you feed the poor. And he said, we call that term charity. Well, I gave an example of Matthew 25. When I was hungry, you fed me. When I was naked, you clothed me. When I was in prison, you visited me. When I was a stranger or a homeless person or whatever, you took me in. Like, those are examples. But yeah, if you're going to say that what I'm giving is abstract examples, then I guess you don't stop at the New Testament. Don't stop at James. Go ahead and say that the host is also giving abstract examples by saying, oh, here's an example. You feed the poor. It's called charity. Why don't you just go ahead and say that that's also abstract as well by using your own logic, Sam? Like, this is a reason why you're like, this is the reason why I keep saying that it seems like you're trying to demonize this whole conversation. I'm not saying you're doing this on purpose. I'm just saying that when we have conversations, there has to be a level of honesty where you actually honestly wrestle with what people are saying. No.
So listen, if we could focus more on the points that we're making versus trying to correct one another, then we can really get somewhere.
Thank you.
You understand? G-Con just came in. Shalom, Mark.
What's going on? Grace and peace to you, brothers.
Yeah, welcome to the show, brother.
Hey, peace, bro.
I haven't had a chance to formally meet you, but I've heard of you, brother. So peace and blessings to you, brother.
Okay.
Likewise, brother. Likewise.
So is it my turn?
Yeah. You got 2 minutes, out.
Okay. Now, Matthew chapter number 5, verse 20. For I say unto you that except your righteousness shall exceed the righteousness of the scribes and Pharisees, ye shall in no case enter the kingdom of Shemaim. Now, the Hebrew Christ is talking to Hebrew folks. He's not explaining what a different definition of righteous. He's basing his argument off of their understanding, right? Then we got Matthew 21 and 32. For Yahuchanan the Immerser, that's John the Baptist, came unto you in the way of righteousness, right? And ye believed him not, but the publicans and the harlots believed him. So now Hamashiach himself, whom you call the Christ, is saying that Yahuchanan, the Immerser, who was telling people to return to the covenant, to return back to the commandments, to repent, which means to return to the commandments concretely, that he was righteousness and he was in the way of righteousness. So in other words, in the mind of Christ, righteousness is what John the Baptist did, which was keeping the commandments and teaching folks to return to the commandments. It's just that simple. So now when we get the concrete definition, lastly, of righteousness, we find in the book of Deuteronomy. I think it's 6 and 20 something, we find in the book of Deuteronomy, it says, and it shall be our righteousness if we observe to do all of these commandments that the Most High gave us. That's concrete, not the stuff that you're talking about. Well, if you just decide to do good, well, then that's righteousness. You can't say that righteousness is not feeding the homeless, and that's neither here nor there. There's a concrete definition of righteousness. I just gave you in context with Hamashiach and how he viewed righteousness, which is what we're supposed to be following and who we're supposed to be listening to. So now, how do you reconcile? Well, whoever turn it is to speak, that's what I wanted to deal with. The Christ himself explained to us what righteousness is, and him defining Yehukanon as being righteous, Yehukanon the immerser as being righteous. Then we had that concrete definition in Deuteronomy that you're saying changed to some abstract stuff in the Greek language. So I would like to deal with that.
All right.
Okay.
G-Con, you want to jump in here before Matt responds?
Yeah, I had to definitely disagree with what he's saying. I'm a man that deal with contracts on a daily basis. You know what I'm saying? And part of my job is I'm a truck driver. And I bid on contracts on a daily basis, and I had to disagree with him because in those contracts are terms and conditions. And so if he's going to say that Christ is talking about that your righteousness should exceed the righteousness of the Pharisees, he's not talking about the righteousness that basically that they're doing. It has to be another righteousness, and I think he said that in Luke 16 and 16 when he talked about the kingdom of God and its righteousness. And when you look at the terms and the laws and the conditions of Moses, it's totally different. And so one thing we see is, especially with black people, is they don't understand contracts. And that's the problem with us. Like, we'll read something, we'll read about cars and phones and stuff like that. And the reason why I'm giving this example is because this is easy, so you guys can grasp it real easy. And so he doesn't understand that there's terms and there's conditions and there's penalties to that contract. And so he's thinking that he's under that law. And so he wants to give you half of it. He don't want to give you all of it. But when you look at it, if he's saying that Jesus was talking about that, then he has a problem then, because when you read the Old Testament, it has judgments with it. And it also has civil laws. And so also it has also type of things of food laws, ceremonial laws, which he's not doing. So that is a binding contract. So what he wants to do is he wants to bring you into a contract that he can no longer fulfill. Because if you look at it, under that blood, what touched that blood was the tabernacle, the people, the blood touched the tabernacle, the people, the vessels, and also it touched the temple, right? The book. And so there was 4 things it touched, and that's binding. That enjoins that to the covenant. This brother is giving us a prime example of how black people go into contracts and don't understand it and get themselves in trouble. And he's doing that right now. And it's going to be a lot of black people that we need to teach them, not just dealing with this law, but with also other laws and aspects of terms and conditions when you reading out these contracts. So this brother lying to people and consistently doing it on a daily basis, lying, and he's a hypocrite because he's not keeping none of the law at all of Moses. And I don't know why he keep teaching that stuff to people, because he's not keeping any of that. And anybody saying they're keeping the law of Moses is a liar, because those things that the blood touch, they're not doing none of those things. So you need to stop lying, Sam, and stop being a hypocrite, bro.
All right, time. So
can I respond to that?
Yeah, I'm gonna let you respond. Before you came on, there was a concern of personal attacks that was brought forth by Matt. So we want to respect each other, man, and just kind of deal with the information and not have personal attacks directly out of respect of what Matt was asking. Matt, you can correct me if I'm wrong. We're not doing that, right?
Right. Yeah, we're not here to do that.
Oh, well, I apologize. I'm sorry. I'm
okay.
sorry on that. I just want
No, it's
worry.
okay.
Okay, I'll be real quick in my response.
Oh, well, actually, it's my turn to respond to you.
Yeah,
So,
hold up. Yeah, Matt, it is your
Yeah.
turn, Matt.
yeah, I
But
do.
the brother was talking directly to
Exactly.
Sam. So if you could allow Sam 2 minutes to respond, and then I'll
Okay.
let you
Yeah.
come.
Okay.
Right.
But let me say this too. Whenever it comes back to you, brother G-Con, when the scriptures were speaking about the righteousness of the Pharisees, would you say that righteousness is the same righteousness that was being taught by Moses, that was being spoken of in Deuteronomy chapter 6, as far as keeping the commandments? Was the Pharisees actually doing that? All right.
Yeah,
I'm gonna let him come. Then I'm gonna let Matt go, and then I'll let you think on that for a second. So, Sam, it's your turn, brother. 2 minutes, and then Matt.
Okay, first and foremost, the righteousness that Matthew 23:3 says, all therefore whatsoever they bid you, observe them. So this is Hamashiach teaching to listen at what the Pharisees say, but don't do what they do, because they don't do what they say. This is what the Christ himself taught. Secondarily, I've been doing contracts over 25. I'm sitting up here doing a contract now. In dealing with real estate, I'm very familiar. I went to real estate school where they taught us all the 4 components of contracts and how to put them together. So he got the wrong one. Now, what the brother is doing is conflating the law with a contract. Your mortgage is not a part of, which is a contract, or your rental agreement, which is a contract, is not a part of the United States Constitution, which is the law. It operates within that law, but it is not the law itself. In other words, your mortgage is not the law, your car lease is not the law, and your rental for your property is not the law. So the brother, he has those things confused up. He's conflating the covenant, which is a contract, with the law, right? He's conflating the two, just like someone would say, well, my lease is the law, so everything written in my lease now is a part of the United States Constitution. No, doesn't work that way. So he's a little bit confused there and trying to jump out the gate and attack and do all these ad hominem fallacies, which is logical fallacies, to get away from the point that there are clear definitions of righteousness and these other Hebrew concepts that's in the book. I'm done.
Hey, if you don't mind, can I just respond real quick? So real, can I
That's
quick?
up to Matt. It's up to Matt.
Really quick.
Hey, Matt,
all right, go ahead. Go ahead, and after that, I'll go.
Hey, listen, what he just said, that is not how a contract works. If you notice, you sign your name on that thing. That's like putting your blood on that thing. And so whatever's in those terms and conditions is ratified by when a person is sign that name to that contract. And so what he just said is it makes no sense at all. And you're not going to get no type of person coming to you without putting the signature on anything with what this brother just said. I don't know where he got that from, but that is that's not what the Bible teach, nor what any contract teach. And I'm gonna end it on this note. When you look at it says you have been enjoined to the covenant. He's shedding blood, and he says without blood there's no remission of sins. So we see also the second covenant was also shed with blood just as well as the first covenant. So I don't know what this brother is talking about. There's a covenant, and the covenant is brought forth by blood, and there's terms and conditions and penalties within those covenants. And the New Testament says there's better promises than of the old. So I don't know what type of contracts this brother been dealing with, but I would never write a contract with this brother, no, except one. Go ahead.
Yeah, I've done hundreds of thousands of dollars in the contracts that I write. I'm writing a real estate contract now. And you didn't even deal with what I said, that there's a difference between the covenant and the law.
It's my turn.
All right, Sam. Go ahead, Matt. The floor is yours.
Go ahead.
Okay. Okay, so I have 2 minutes. So basically Sam, he went to Matthew chapter 5 to talk about an example of righteousness, right? And so what he says here, for I say unto you that except your righteousness exceed the righteousness of the scribes and Pharisees, you're not going to see the kingdom of heaven. And then from there, Sam, all he said was, well, they knew what Jesus was talking about. And so there's your answer. Now, time out. God forbid that I would have said that. Because if I would have said that, Sam's own logic would have been said, well, time out. What about the people here now? We are asking about people who don't know. Can you give us an example? It's not good enough just to see that they already know what Jesus is talking about. What about this crowd? What about the crowd listening? So his example of righteousness failed. Plus, it fights against him because whatever kind of righteousness Jesus is talking about is not talking about getting it from the law of Moses, because that's what the scribes and Pharisees are doing. And you got to do something that exceeds that. You can't exceed that if you're just trying to go ahead and do something similar to or exactly what they're doing. That doesn't work. Then after that, he went to Matthew 21, verse 32. And he said, look, John he came in the way of righteousness. And, so there's another example of John coming in the way of righteousness, and they didn't believe him. But yet, nowhere is talking about what righteousness is. It just says John came in the way of righteousness. And then after that, he says, John was keeping the commandments, and he was telling everyone to keep the commandments. And also, he was telling everyone to repent, and repent means keep the commandments. No, that's the problem. Every time you look at what John was doing and teaching, you don't see that. You see him baptizing people, but you don't see baptism in the Old Testament. Where's that coming from? Then after that, you can look in Luke 7:29 and 30. It says all the people heard him, right? This is John, right? And the publicans justified by God, being baptized by John. But the Pharisees and lawyers rejected the counsel of God against themselves, not being baptized by John. So that lets you know that the Pharisees, lawyers, and people like that, they rejected the counsel of God. Right? They rejected the will of God by what? Not keeping the law? No, not being baptized by John. So,
all right, man. Time. All right. So no worries, Matt. You're gonna be able to come back on, man. Clearly, Christ spoke of the Pharisees. He called them something, and he called them hypocrites. Now, what is the definition of being a hypocrite? This is why he said what he said in the book of Matthew: do as they say and not as they do. What was going on during the time of Christ was you had two fashions. You had the Romans, who were bringing in contrary culture to the people of Judea, and would influence the people to practice their culture. And then you would have the Pharisees on the back end, who would come behind them and use the laws to punish, even kill members and the citizens of Judea, the children of Israel. You had them using the Most High's law to kill them after being influenced by the Romans. So that statement of being a hypocrite is you have to be utilizing the law or speaking on the law, but you yourself are not keeping the law. That's what makes you a hypocrite. I want you to respond to that, Matt, but it is Sam's turn. Sam, you got 2 minutes.
I'm gonna go ahead and let Matt respond to that, bro, because I cut him off the last time, and to respond.
Yeah, it's all right. Hey, it's all good. Yeah, I definitely do believe that the Pharisees definitely were hypocrites. I think the part where we go a little too far is that when your last statement, which was that's what a hypocrite is. It's when someone claims to be keeping the law or something like that, but they're actually not. And when you actually just look at the Greek word hypocrite, it's hypokrito. I believe it means one who wears two masks, kind of like what we see in all these plays. There's a smiley face and there's a frowny face, and so it just means like you're saying one thing but you're doing another. You know, it's like it's like lying in action. And so to limit that to say, well, it only is when you're saying that you're keeping law, not keeping law, that's not the definition of what a hypocrite is. You know, I think what you gave is an example of what a hypocrite is.
Right,
You know,
right.
but that's not the actual definition. So this is why I keep on saying back and forth that, you know, there is a difference between a definition and an example. And I said, I think that's the issue that
Yeah,
we're talking past each other, you know.
right.
So I think we should really like look at, you know, if we have issues with our definitions, then let's just get to some of our examples and let's just see if we can come up with enough examples that would, you know, pertain to the viability of our definitions. You know what I mean? Like if you have no problem with this example, then, you know, then all of a sudden you should not have any problem with my definition or something like that. You know, so I think that's another testing way that we could test something. Let's look at
Yeah,
examples in scripture and see those ones and see if they actually carry one of our points or both of our points. Just like for righteousness or holiness or repentance or
right.
commandments, right? So
Time, time,
yeah,
time, time. So yeah, I think we can do that. We can do that, you know.
Bruh,
But
he just set you up, bruh. What he doing is trying to get out of giving a definition because he doesn't have one and he hasn't provided one. So now he wants you to stick with his abstract examples. That's what he just did. He just gaslighted you,
all
bro.
right, all right. Well, go ahead, Sam. You got 2 minutes, man. Talk to us.
Okay. Now, here's what we're watching for those of you guys that watching. We're watching these two Christian apologists run and jump around. They try to attack me and make up red herring arguments, side arguments that have nothing to do with what we're talking about. The topic here is defining sin. We try to get into righteousness because righteousness is directly related to sin. And neither one of them have given a concrete definition of what righteousness is. Now, we have provided that it shall be our righteousness if we keep those commandments. Sin is the transgression of the law. What you're seeing is a complete meltdown and breakdown of Christian apologetics, the Pauline the Christian apologetic community. The brother G Con never even dealt with the fact that I said he's conflating a contract and the law. Your contract is not the law. So he go back to, you got to sign a contract. He don't know. I build contracts from scratch, not just sign them, not just read them over. I put them together because I went to school, real estate school, Coldwell Banker Grimpler Realty over 25 years ago, probably when he was still crapping in his diaper, and putting together contracts. He probably couldn't even tell you what the main four parts of a contract is. But now I've gotten off for what I just judged him for. But anyway, the main point that I'm making is that the contract, the covenant is different from the law. The contract or the covenant operates within the confines of the law, but it is not the law itself. When you get a mortgage, it does not mean that your mortgage is a part of the United States Constitution that the whole world has to abide by. It's agreement within the confines of the law between you and your mortgage company or you and your landlord or what have you. That's the difference that the brother is not dealing with and that he obviously don't understand, trying to be condescending. Finally, the righteousness, like the brother said, to play the part of a hypocrite. That's why they say to play the part is what actors do. They're playing a scene. And the reason why Hamashiach said, except your righteousness exceed their righteousness, is because they were talking about it and not doing it. That's why I went to Matthew chapter number 23, which shows that Christ said, do what they say, but don't do as they do, because they don't even do what they say. And then finally, 2 seconds, Matthew chapter number 15 tells us clearly, Hamashiach said they were using their oral Torah traditions to transgress the actual commandments that was given to Moshe. I would like to see these brothers deal with that and deal with the topic instead of the nonsense.
Oh, you know what? I apologize because this is a recap, and I came in dealing with what you guys were shooting at, dealing with. And so, you know, far as like where you left off at, that's why I jumped in. But I seen the debate, I seen y'all debate, and you was definitely off topic. And I'm gonna tell you why. Because you jumped in there and you did not define sin, first off. You didn't define sin at
Now,
all.
can you cut
But you
this
did.
brother off, bro? Because he is not. He
No,
just went.
hold on.
He's
I'm
doing
finna.
what we
No,
said.
I'm finna deal with the topic. I'm finna deal with the
Okay,
topic, bro. So what you
right.
did was you didn't deal with sin. You didn't
Oh,
deal with sin. What you did was you went to, you didn't deal with it in the Hebrew. What sin mean?
I'm gonna give you an extra 30 seconds because I gave Sam an extra 30, so I'm trying to be fair here. All right, go ahead.
Okay, appreciate it. So you didn't deal with sin, which is kata
You
or
know,
kata'a.
he can have my 2 minute time. He can have my 2 minute time, and when he's done, I'll go ahead and go. I'm just interested in what he has to say.
how is he gonna have your 2 minutes and then you'll
Right.
go ahead and go?
Let me do this, Matt, brother, please.
Oh, all right. I'm sorry. My fault.
Thank you, sir.
I would like to respond to his stuff if I can, bro. If not, if you don't, okay.
All right, G. You back on, man. I pause your time. Go ahead.
I appreciate it. Thanks, brother. So what I seen him he dealt with he dealt with the what he felt like what the definition was when he seen it. He says sin is the transgression of the law, which that's definitely it, but he didn't really deal with what it is in the Hebrew, which is kata or kata'a. And so what that means is to shoot forth or to miss the mark. And so like when it says the angels which sinned, which kept not their first estate, you wouldn't say that these angels was under the law of Moses. And I hope you wouldn't say that, because you're not going to go up to no angel. You're going to tell them, thou shalt not commit adultery, or, you know what I'm saying, you can only have this amount of wives or this and that, because that's not given unto them. So you're not going to do that. And so when you're saying what a sin is much more than breaking the law of Moses. Sin is breaking every teachings or instructions, which is Torah, which is teachings and instructions of the Most High God. That's what that is. It's much more than the law of Moses, because the angels which sinned, which kept not their first estate, but was cast out, they wasn't following no law of Moses. And I hope you're not telling the people are teaching that, brother. So it's much more than that that definition that you gave. You got to go farther than that, because Adam, when there was a fallen serpent that was in the garden before Adam came into the garden. So we need to talk about how he fell. Oh, was he keeping the law of Moses? Was the angels keeping the law of Moses? Honor their father and their mother. How is that gonna work out? Children, obey your parents, for this is right in the sight of the Lord. You know, how does that work out? You know, how do you deal with that? This is why he don't want to talk about terms and conditions, because he know he out of pocket. He keeps saying he write contracts, but you couldn't possibly be writing contracts talking like you're talking. And for those who think they up under the law, you better start doing the somebody working on the Sabbath, you supposed to stone them. That's to the law. He says you supposed to fall.
All right, time. You kind of breaking up there, G-Con. If you could move to another area or something. Sam, listen, before Sam go, man, there's because I asked So Real this in their debate. And I think I might have asked him this privately as well. When you're dealing with a family, G-Con, when you're dealing with a family versus laws that need to be implemented for a nation, right? Those laws have to be modified to govern a people. So just like you have laws that are governing a people, you have laws that are governing a family, and guess what? You have laws that govern the angels. And so these laws are put in place because the Most High God is about order. And in order to have order, the people must clearly understand what they should do and what they shouldn't do. It cannot be in the spirit of ambiguity. Well, we don't really know, we're just, it has to be something concrete. All right. When you're dealing with, even now, if each one of you open up an apartment complex, guess what you would establish? A law. It must be a law here. Because if it's not a law here, that means I can go into my neighbor's house and steal their things, right? I can steal their things. Or I could use graffiti on their cars or on their walls. If there's no law, there's going to be chaos. This is what I don't understand.
No, you missing it. That's why you missed everything I just said. You missed everything I just said. I'm not saying they're not under the law of Moses in its terms and its conditions. I'm saying Moses in its tenets has came over to the New Testament. So let's say, for instance, you got one apartment complex over here that has certain type of rules in the base levels of those same laws that the next apartment complex got. Then those are base laws that we see. But there's additions of things that we see that might be added to one don't have over in the next one. So what I'm saying is the morality or the moral construct of the Lord never changes. That's his moral construct. It never changes. And so when you get over to the New Testament, you see that there's a basis of the tenets of that law over in the New Testament, things like civil judgments, like civil judgment. You say you're a nation. Well, let's see. Don't put them outside the nation. You can't do that. That's not going to happen. You're going to get locked up in America doing that. So you're not sovereign. You're not a sovereign nation to carry out your civil judgment.
But I'm saying you do realize that we believe in Christ, right?
Right. So Christ that's why you're under the New Testament. Then you're not under the Old one. Then.
Yeah. So Christ came to bring in repentance. What does that mean? That means if a person commits something that is worthy of death, according to Colossians chapter 2, you're not supposed to allow somebody to kill you because of whatever it is that you did, because we are under grace, right, brother?
Well, you're under the law of liberty. So you're not under the law of Moses then. So that's what I'm telling you.
No. But the difference is, right? The difference is that grace, the word grace itself is a time period that runs out. Do you agree, bro?
I definitely agree. So that's what I'm telling you. Right now, you're under the law of liberty right now. You're not under the law of Moses, because if you was under the law of Moses, you supposed to end. That's why he says there's two covenants.
The covenants is still one covenant. You understand? The Most High has done a marvelous work in regards to these people, the children of Israel, brother, have been punished, and in order for them to come out of that punishment, and that same people that the Most High chose from the beginning, in order for them to come back, because I've talked with Matt multiple times, and we both agree that Jew and Gentile are still allowed an opportunity to make it to the kingdom. Would you agree to that, G-Con?
I definitely agree to that. In the gospel, not under the law of Moses, though. You're not gonna. Right.
But listen to what I'm saying. These are the same people that had the actual covenant. So if they had that actual covenant, that means that they themselves are now separated based upon the laws of Moses, because they do not have the sacrificial lamb, neither do they have that spirit of repentance in order for them to come back from breaking the laws. You understand? So that same liberty that you're speaking about is also extended to the children of Israel. So we have to have an understanding of what that actually means. And what it means is what John the Baptist brought forth in Matthew chapter 3, which is repentance.
Right. And so, I brother, hold on for a minute, because I don't want to get it screwed up. You do need to repent, first of all. But yeah, you definitely need to repent.
There you go, brother.
Hold on. So you definitely, I'm not denying a person need to repent. Now, when you look at it, what John the Baptist had, there was a righteousness that was greater than John the Baptist, because when Christ came, he said, "Listen, I'm not even worthy to even loose the latchets of your shoes." So the
Right.
righteousness that need to be fulfilled was in Christ, which is something that he did. So I'm not denying that you do need to repent. Now here's the thing: repent means to turn back to God. He says the gospel is the power of God unto salvation. And when you look at the gospel is, that's why Paul is making a distinction between that, and when you look in also Genesis chapter 12, there's a distinction between the law and the gospel, because when you look at it, it's through the gospel that even Rahab was able to come into the promises of the inheritance of Israel. It's through the gospel. It's not through the. If you're getting the inheritance by the law, then you forfeit it, because you know why? Because you ain't been doing the law to its entirety. You get the inheritance through the gospel, which is the power of God unto salvation, and that's how everybody come in, even Peter and all them.
What part of the law do you have a problem with? Which one do you have a problem with, bro? Which one? Which one would you say is not good for us?
I got a problem.
He has a problem with.
I got a problem. Let me tell you what I got a problem with the whole law of Moses. It's out of there now. What I gotta now what I hold on. Let me finish. Let me clarify that. Let me clarify that.
Please, brother, because you said a whole thing. Go ahead, brother.
From one contract to the next. So what I mean is that contract that you see, it's a binding contract. Now, when you start looking at the New Testament, now let's start dealing with some of the tenets of the law of Moses that has came into the New Testament. So the killer has been killed. So the thing that was killing me, that was causing me to die, because it wasn't allowing me to, I wasn't allowed, I couldn't fulfill it. Christ has nailed that to the cross and has established the new covenant. So if you're saying like Christ is a priest under the New Testament. Okay, cool. Christ is, so I'm gonna end it on this note. Christ is a priest up under the New Testament and not the Old. If he was up under the Old, he's not. Why? Because he comes from Judah.
I thought Christ was the Melchizedek, though.
Nah,
the Melchizedek. Hold on. You're right. The Melchizedek is not according to the law, the Leviticus law. It's not there. Now, the order of Melchizedek is a order that precedes the Levitical law, the Levitical thing, because it comes from Melchizedek.
Right, which is in Genesis.
Right, and so that was given to Abraham by promise. That was not given to Abraham up under the Levitical priesthood. Now, technically, Israel, the whole nation, is a priest. The only way that can happen is by the Melchizedek law. That's it. It can't happen no other way. So you will ask yourself, how can the whole nation be a priesthood? It's through Melchizedek, and it's through Christ, which is a foreshadow of Christ. It's not no other way.
I like this. We getting somewhere, man. Come on, Sam. Talk to us, man. You got 2 minutes.
All right, bro. Let me share my screen here real quick, bro.
This is
yeah, it's going in, man. It's going in right now.
Let me share my screen real quick. I'm sharing the screen. I want to deal with something that he said, and maybe after my 2 minutes, I can get to deal with the other stuff that he was talking about and the law. And
y'all want to push it up to 3 minutes?
However you guys want to structure it is cool with me.
Yeah, what you think?
Yeah, let's push it to, I say let's push it to 3 minutes. But if we do, then that means we really literally all got to play tic-tac-toe, like me, you.
Yeah. Well, I want to keep the order, man, and I know I'm gonna let you come in after Sam here, and then we'll keep it going. Then we'll bring G coming back.
But I'm enjoying it though.
I'm gonna have to listen in though, because my wife, she just got in the vehicle, so I gotta listen in. So I'm.
Hey, man, you better make it right with the wife, brother.
Yeah, I'm trying to. Yeah, because she already. I love y'all, brothers, man. Grace and peace. Grace and peace.
No doubt.
All right,
man.
Okay. Yeah. Is that showing in the screen? Yeah. Okay. Cool. All right. Now, the brother said that he's on here gaslighting, talking about I didn't, and this is actually one of my contracts here that I was writing. That's not what I want. How do I get to my? I wanted to show. Oh, here it's going to be here. Um, Presentation. There we go. Is that it? Yeah. So he said I never dealt with the concrete Hebrew. For those of you guys that watch the debate, this is what I talk about these Christian apologists and how they lie and gaslight like the devil. I actually did go in.
Come on, man. We're not doing that, man. Come on, man.
Right, right. So, like I was saying, he actually said that I didn't get into. So I'll just say he gaslighted. Leave the devil part out, because this is a part of the problem and issue with these apologists, right? So now I gave you guys the way. The way is the straight, or the will of the Most High, which is called the straight and narrow road, path, or trail. And I went into the divine teachings, which is the Torah. Which is the divine directions or instructions on the trail. Then I went into righteousness, number 3, which is staying on the straight and narrow. Then I specifically gave the concrete definition of sin, which means to leave the straight and narrow trail. That straight and narrow trail is the will of the Most High, which is called the way. I also where's my picture at here? Oh man. Oh, I guess I gotta go somewhere. Oh, let me go back up here. I also went into, and this is the concrete Hebrew, and this is the brother he just said on here. And I watched Sam, and he didn't go into the concrete Hebrew and all of this other kind of stuff. I also qualified that with the Thayers that they love so much, and prove that, right? If you're looking at this Thayers here, I don't know why this other thing is coming up here. Cancel. It tells you here, and this is the Thayers, right? This is the Thayers dealing with which word is this? 246 hamartia. I think it is the word, right? The word hamartia for the Greek word. And what do you guys see here? It says to miss, to wander from the path of uprightness. Same thing I said here. I specifically said that, but he said I never gave a concrete definition. This is what I be talking about these guys. And now finally, this whole we're not under the law. Christ himself was under the law and subjected to the law. Paul told y'all that. Born of a woman, born under the law. That's what it says in your King James Version. Under means subject to, born subject to the law. So Hamashiach himself was born subject to the law. He taught the law. All of the apostles kept the law, kept the Torah, kept the divine teachings, all of them. And then they trained their disciples to do the same. And we got biblical evidence of that, and we got historical records of that. But yet these guys want you to believe in some, mystical, esoteric, Gnostic interpretation of where the definition of sin, the definition of righteousness that Hamashiach taught to his apostles, well, actually that was taught to Abraham and was passed down and reconfirmed in Moshe and Moses, that was taught by the Christ himself, who taught his apostles, who taught the first century Nazarenes, who in turn we have historical records, same way, the same law, defining sin the same way, defining righteousness the same way. We got evidence of that all the way up into the 4th century, 400 years after Hamashiach died. It makes no sense whatsoever. I'm done.
All right, Matt.
Yeah. Since this really is like getting off of like what we were talking about in terms of righteousness, now we're just like talking about the law and things. So I'm just going with the flow of the conversation. When they go back to the righteousness or whatever they want to go back to, then we'll go back to that. But the fact is that I gave a definition of what sin is. I find it interesting that he is going into the Thayers to basically show like.
Say it again, Matt.
Oh, can I say it again? What?
Yeah, give me the definition of sin again.
Sure. Yeah, just from Thayer's, yeah, what he was basically reading there. Um, what he was doing was he actually showed that Thayer's has the Hebrew concepts of sin in it. Now, this is something that I actually chose not to touch to, because I thought that we would really get too deep into things. He didn't show anything that was new at all. Actually, I'm glad he actually picked it up, because this is what I've been wanting to say all along. That when we begin to go ahead and attack um, the Greek, then all of a sudden the Greek begins to hold the same concepts as the Hebrew, which goes to show, well, I guess the people who transliterated it into the Greek held to those same the concepts, which shows that you can't attack the Greek like that. So that's the reason why I was glad he actually showed that. Even when he goes into, well, look at what the Hebrew says. It means, to wander from the path, or to miss the mark. And I could just push him to death, like the path, what path or what mark. And if you end up saying, well, it's Mosaic, well, once again, that calls into question what happens with the angels, which was part of my questions from yesterday, which I never got to ask, which was something that G-Con asked, which he just really didn't address. What about all these individuals who, according to the Hebrews in Genesis, sinned, according to Peter in his epistle, sinned, but yet the Mosaic law did not exist for them to sin against. So if you try to say that the path is the law and things like that is the law, then all of a sudden that's the kind of questions that it begs. Like, because Mosaic law didn't exist, during the time of the angels, but Peter said that the angels sinned. So this is the reason why I keep saying that his definition of sin does not work. There's nothing wrong with saying, all right, it's wandering from the path, it's missing the mark, and things like that. We all believe that. The thing is, the moment that you say that it's Mosaic, well, then all of a sudden, like, you just totally misdefine what sin is, which means that you made sure that sin doesn't exist until the law of Moses was made. So that's one of the issues that I find with it. Plus, no one ever said anything about my what I pulled up with the unabridged Brown Javin Briggs definition, where it said universally the definitions of sin, and how it said that there's not one man on the earth that does good and does not sin. Not one man, Jew, Gentile, from all time. And this is the way that the Hebrews were talking about man and sin. And so what do you do with that? And this is stuff that he just never hit on. And there are all the scriptures there, which I didn't have time to go through, but they're there on the screen. And so I'm calling his question, I'm calling his definition of sin into question. And so far he has not answered me. But yeah, when it comes to sin, sin is basically wickedness. Sin is rebellion against God. Sin is, simply just doing wrong when you know to do right, just as James says. But as he said earlier, he said that James himself was vague, even though James wrote to the 12 tribes. But because the New Testament is vague according to him, like, do you see the issues?
All right, time.
Yeah.
All right, so listen, man. We have some very serious issues in the so-called Black community. These serious issues they vary. So first thing I want to do is ask you, Matt, do you know anybody that has diabetes?
Yeah, my dad in December 12th of 2014, he had passed. He had diabetes. So yeah, I do know people who have had diabetes.
Okay, my condolences, brother, sincerely.
Yeah, that was in 2014, not this year. I'm sorry.
All right, no worries, man. Yeah, sorry to hear that, man. All right, so let me ask you directly, so I'm sure you would know. Was it ever told, if not to him, just to anybody that might have diabetes, are they told not to eat pork, brother?
To be honest, I would assume so. You know what I mean?
All right.
Okay.
That's okay. So then we go into the Bible, right? And the Most High tells us this is what I be saying about, because I asked G-Con directly, what law do you have a problem with? His response was, Matt, to throw away the whole law. That don't make no sense at all, brother. We need some of that. You know what we need? To honor our mother and father, to not covet, to not commit adultery. And we need the dietary law, brother. Why? Because when I go to Deuteronomies, right? Deuteronomies chapter 30, this is what it says, right? Deuteronomies 30 and verse 19. Let me start at verse 16. And that I command thee this day to love the Lord thy God, to walk in his ways. Notice when Sam brought forth his presentation, it was about walking a particular path, right? So it says, and that I command thee this day to love the Lord thy God, to walk in his ways, and to keep his commandments. The commandments, brother, that we're calling the laws of Moses did not generate from Moses. Those laws was given to him if we believe the biblical narrative. If we believe the biblical narrative, Moses didn't make up laws and then decided that these would probably be good for y'all. These were things that was directly given to him from the Father in heaven. He says here, and that I command thee this day to love the Lord thy God, to walk in his ways and to keep his commandments and his statutes and his judgments. That laws, statutes, and judgments are found in Genesis chapter 26, verse 5, which was told to Abraham. That he was assured that he would keep the laws, statutes, and commandments and teach them to his children. It says that thou mayest live, Brother Matt. If you want to live and multiply, and the Lord thy God shall bless thee in the land, whether thou go to possess it. Anywhere you go on earth, carry these laws with you, man. It's going to help govern you. The dietary law is important, man. It's important that we have physical health, man. Certain things we ought not eat. There's a reason. I can pull a dual screen right now and give you a multitude of lists of why we shouldn't be eating pork. And why would the Christian church say that just pray over it and everything gonna be all right? But yet, as soon as you get diabetes, first thing they tell you to do is to put down the pork, which the Lord said to put down thousands of years ago. So it says here, and don't mistake my passion. I love you, brother.
Yeah, I love you too, man, all my heart.
Yeah, so it says verse 17, but if thine heart turn away, so that thou wilt not hear, but shall be drawn away and worship other gods and serve them. We have to be very careful in understanding the origins of the things that we worship. What they try to say is not worship, but the Christmas trees are worship, brother. You're getting on your knees and you're grabbing your gift. That's a form of worship. Oh, well, brother, I'm not praying to it, brother. I'm not, but yet you have families, if you're not doing it, you have families who hold hands and sing lullabies to the damn Christmas tree, brother. This is what they do. And this is worldwide, this particular practice, which goes back to paganism, which I know you are familiar with. But yet you're telling people Merry Christmas. But yet these things, people try to take something bad and make it good. And say, well, brother, I know this is originally pagan, but we're gonna use it to celebrate the Lord. The Lord don't want you to do that. That's nowhere in the scriptures do it say make an idol and destroy the idol and then just deal with the practices of the idol. No, that's not what the Bible is saying here. It says, verse 17, but if thine heart turn away so that thou wilt not hear, but shall be drawn away and worship other gods and serve them. Verse 18, I denounce unto you this day that ye shall surely perish, and that ye should not prolong your days upon the land whether thou pass over the Jordan to possess it. Verse 19, I call heaven and earth to record this day against you, that I have set before you life and death, blessings and curses. Therefore, choose life, that both thou and thy seed may live. Is this a part of the section of the Bible that we should throw away? Should we not read this? Should we not consider this? And then we have to examine. Now, once we open up that apartment complex and establish laws, what laws should we go with? Should we go with communism? Right? Should we go with Marxism? Should we go with the laws of the land, which says homosexuality is okay? Should we go with these things, brother? Or should we turn to the Lord in which we believe in and try to establish and affirm things concrete to what we should do and what we shouldn't do, and not leave it up to ambiguity and go with how you feel? Matt, the floor is yours.
I just had to clap while I'm trying to turn over this fish in the oven here. Man,
I hope it's not fish, brother. But go ahead.
But you better preach. You better. No. All right. So I guess what I'll say is, now I do admit, now you didn't hit on. Now you know what you did, right? You just hit on so many points that. Now I could respond to everything, but I think
points of the law. But go ahead.
Yeah, okay. I could respond to everything, but I think because of the audience, I think I'd rather just tiptoe with stuff and we could haggle stuff piece by piece instead of me just responding to everything. I think the crowd is tired of that. So the first thing I want to say is that I do personally believe that like as Christians and also as professing Hebrews, like we're both concerned about health. I do believe that as of the year 2019, the old 1980s vintage Christian of just, well, we could eat pork and it's all good. I think that that's definitely gone now. I think everyone is definitely a lot more health conscious these days. That's just the way it is, I think that when it comes to food, yeah, you definitely do have to be a good steward of your body. It's the temple of the Lord. I think that the issue is that even though I can understand your intent as to why you're using the dietary law, because you're like, hey, man, look at the community. Look at the Black community. Like, we got diabetes more than anybody. We got heart this more than anybody. And we need something to go ahead to stop all this. So I feel you, bro. Like I've been seeing that, and I know brothers like that who've been like that for years. I feel you. I know exactly where you're coming from. You know what I'm saying? And my whole thing is like, if people want to go ahead and use the dietary law to help better the health of the Black community, then go ahead, dietary on. If that's what you want to do. I think the issue is that when they begin to tiptoe or creep into things like, okay, this is the will of God, that he wants us to go to continue to keep this in the new covenant. Like, this is what he intended. And I think that's the part where, all of a sudden now there's a bit of a split and a divide. And I already know what you're thinking. You're like,
I want you to go right there. That's what I want.
Yeah, that's what. Right. So that's what I'm about to talk about now. So
Yeah.
I already know what you're thinking. You're like, well, Matt, one, we need to do something. Two, if Jesus kept the dietary law and the apostles did and things like that, then
Right.
why don't we end up keeping it? And the issue is that, for one, you don't necessarily see all the disciples keeping the dietary law like that. And two, especially when you look in their epistles, you don't see them encouraging anyone to keep the dietary law, and especially Jesus. What you see is something very different. When I looked into, now here's my example. Now this is just one, okay? When I looked into any kind of dietary law concern that Jesus had, it was meat being sacrificed to idols. Like that's what it was. The concern for Jesus was, what food did to you, like morally, spiritually, not health wise. So when you look in Revelation chapter 2, in verse 20, in verse 14 and verse 20, this is Jesus speaking, who's being dictated through John, and he's talking to the church of Pergamum, and he says, "This is Jesus, right?" He says, "But I have." Revelation chapter 2, verse 14. He says, "But I have a few things against thee, because thou hast there them that hold the doctrine of Balaam, who taught Balak to cast a stumbling block before the children of Israel, to eat things sacrificed to idols and commit fornication." And then you jump to verse 20. And he ends up talking to the church at Thyatira. He says, "Notwithstanding, I have a few things against thee, because thou sufferest that woman Jezebel, which called herself prophet, to teach and to seduce my servants to commit fornication and to eat things sacrificed unto idols." And so when it comes to Jesus, he could have said anything exhaustively about the dietary law. Like he really could have, but instead this seems to be his focus. His focus seems to be about the allegiance to a certain God that this food connects you to. That's the reason why Paul said, look, you can't eat at the table of demons and at the table of the Lord.
Something right there on that point. Would you get upset with me?
Say it again.
Would you be upset with me if I asked you something right there on that point?
No, go ahead. Even if it's off topic, I know. Go ahead.
No, on that point about now, let's say I've been writing you letters, right? And I wrote you 10 letters. In the 4th letter, I gave you I talked about laws, right? Mm-hmm. By the time I get to the 10th letter, I already talked to you about the laws. So now I'm covering other things. Do I have to reiterate the law in every letter for you to understand that you should deal with the law?
No, you don't. And so the next question is, can we have an example of Jesus telling John to write to the 7 churches everything that I'm telling you, and then all of a sudden, as he's writing, can we find somewhere in this exhaustiveness of him getting anywhere into the Mosaic law? So we have everything that that's there, that's written. So can we look right there and see if there's anything about, like what you're saying? Like, does your example match stuff that we see in the book of Revelation? There's only so much that was written.
Revelation 14 and 12. Can you read that?
Sure, yeah, I can. All right, so let's go to Revelation 14 and 12. And Revelation 14 and 12 says here is the patience of the saints. Here are they that keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus. Now, of course, I've already heard this before. A lot of times people look at that phrase, commandments of God, and they think that it means what? The 10 Commandments, the old covenant commandments that were in Leviticus. Don't eat things that are like pigs and stuff like that. That's what they think. The problem is when you look at this Greek word commandments, it doesn't mean that. That word commandments is specific to whoever is given the command and to command what. And so when you read earlier in the chapter, you can see all the commandments that are given. One is, hear the gospel, believe the gospel. Another is worship God. And then after that, the other commandments are given in types of warnings saying, if you worship the beast, you're not partaking of the things of heaven.
Wait a minute. So is Revelation separated from the rest of the Bible?
Say it again.
Is Revelation separated from the rest of the Bible?
It sure isn't. But are the commandments that are there in Revelation 14 the same commandments that we could find in the law of Moses? No, they're not. So because they're not found there, which goes to show that, just as I said, when you look at the Greek word entole, commandments, it really is like specific commandments that are given by whoever and whatever those commandments are.
Wait. That's that ambiguity, Matt, right there.
Okay. So, all right. So let's go ahead and disprove my ambiguity. I'm going to go ahead and click on the Greek word that John used there. All right. For commandments. Let's just see what it means. And then from there, let's just go to every place that I've cataloged the word commandments. And let's see that every time the word commandment is used, let's see if it's only referring to the law of Moses. And if it's not, you have some explaining to do. Okay.
All right. I'm gonna give you 2 minutes, and then I'm gonna let Sam come back in.
Okay. All right. So let me do this real quick. So
go ahead. Go ahead, bro.
Got it. So this is the word entole. It's G1785, and it just means an order, a command, a charge, a precept, an injunction. It also means a precept relating to lineage of the Mosaic precept concerning the priesthood, ethically use of the commandments in the Mosaic law. In other words, morally use in the commandments of the Mosaic law or Jewish tradition. So I think it's funny that, you even have the moral law, which existed before the law of Moses, so it made it into it. So that's the definition. If you go to Thayer's Unabridged, this is what it'll say.
Hey, I'm sorry, G what?
That's G1785. All right.
Okay, thank you.
Now, if you go to Thayer's Unabridged, it will say things like, where is it at? Here it is. Universally of the commandments of God, especially as promulgated in the Christian religion. And after that, it'll quote 1 John 3:23, 1 John 4:21, 1 John 5:3, 1 John 3:23 again, 1 John 4:21, 2 John 1:4, and all these other ones, Revelation 12:7, Revelation 14:12, Revelation 22:14, and after that, it just goes on. And then after that, it says, of those things which God commanded to be done by Christ. Then it says, of the precepts of Christ relative to the orderly arrangement and affairs of religious assemblies, and also it says of the moral precepts of Christ and his apostles. So every time you look at this word commandments, it's not just referring to the law of Moses. And then lastly, I looked at places where the apostles started commanding them specific things that just aren't in the Mosaic law at all, like believe the gospel. I went to Acts chapter 2, I believe it was. Let me see. I'm going to go to one of them right now.
Is a commandment?
Say it again.
Believe the gospel is a commandment?
Yes. Matter of fact, Jesus actually gave a commandment. He said, repent and believe the gospel. Like, that's what he said. And when you look at the word repent simply just means to turn. It doesn't say to turn from the law. If it means, it doesn't mean turn back to the law. If it means turn back to the law, then how in the world could anyone have repented if the law didn't exist? You have in Genesis where it says God repented.
1 second. I want to show you something real quick.
Okay.
Look at my screen. All right. Screen share. I want everybody watching to see this. Right?
Yeah.
This is hold up. Okay, here we go. Can you see my screen?
Yes, I do. I see your screen. Yep.
All right. So this is G. This is what you gave me. G1785, right?
Yep.
G1785. Look at this, Matt. Look at this. Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
That's fair.
Use of the commandments in the Mosaic law are Jewish tradition.
I just read that. I told you what that meant.
Explain.
Remember, I said, look, I said ethnically used of the commandments in the Mosaic law or Jewish tradition. And then after that, I said morally. Like that's what it's dealing with, ethics and morals. And so from there, I end up saying this proves that the moral law existed before the Mosaic law, because any kind of ethics or things like that made it into the Mosaic law, which goes to what me and G-Con and everyone else been saying, that when it comes to the new covenant, this is a reason why you could look at certain things that Jesus and the apostles are preaching from the law that are what? Moral. That's why, because it's always been the right or wrong thing to do.
I don't understand what you mean by that, bro. Like, check this out. When you're establishing a community, right? When you're governing a people, it's more than moral laws to govern a people, bro. There's civil law, there's civil law, dietary law, right? Laws of ritualistic laws, right?
Right, but let me pause and ask you a question. Right, but let me pause and ask you a question. Now you said ritualistic, right? Which would be like sacrifice, things like that. So those things, are they ethical? Like, in other words, are they moral, or are they immoral if you don't do them? Like, or are they just ritual?
No, again, when you are establishing law for to govern a people, you have to have certain things that would draw them together. It's imperative to have a strong nation if everyone are made themselves familiar, or you have something that unifies them as a people. Would you agree to that?
I definitely agree with that, but you're not addressing what I'm gracefully asking you. This definition here just showed a type of law, which is what? The ethical laws, or in other words, the moral laws. And you also ended up adding to it by saying, hey, there are also ritual laws or ceremonial laws, right? Which are like sacrifice and things like that. And I ask you, since these are two different types of laws, you would never say that a ritual or ceremonial law is a moral law. You would never say that, right?
Right. No, I wouldn't.
Right. Okay. So this goes to show, right? So this goes to show that whatever these ceremonial laws were, they definitely came in like sometime later, which is the reason why you see all kind of practices from Leviticus and onward that you will never see in like Adam or Noah or Abraham. I mean, at most you might find some base things like animal sacrifice, which is what everyone did. You might find something like that, but you're not going to find like, and on the 8th day, you're going to do the feast of dedication, but you're not going to find that, which goes to show that one of these types of laws existed long before the law of Moses, which was what? The moral law. It's always been wrong to kill somebody. It's always been wrong to lie. That's the reason why you find Cain killing Abel. So when I say the moral law is eternal, it's because it's based off God, not Moses.
I want to let Sam jump in here.
Okay.
We kind of been at it, but when it comes to deliverance that the Most High done for His people,
yeah,
and they create a ceremony in remembrance of this act, no different than people do for 9/11 or do for the Oklahoma bombing. I'm in Oklahoma City. They have a ceremony every year.
Yeah.
To remember. right? So
Right.
now the children of Israel, they shouldn't remember being delivered out of Egypt. They shouldn't remember that. They should remember being delivered from the Greeks during the Hasmonean dynasty, what we are in the midst of right now, which is the Feast of Dedication or Rededication, which Jewish people call Hanukkah. We shouldn't remember the great and wonderful acts of deliverance that the Most High given us because now we are Christians, brother. But yet you celebrate Christmas every year. Come on, bro.
Okay, can I answer that?
We got to be more real. Yeah. I want you to respond, and I'm gonna let Sam come in.
Okay, so you're asking, should the Jews, or those who profess to be Hebrews, just totally forget and just do away with how they were delivered out of Egypt? I would say no. They shouldn't forget at all. I think they should remember. I mean, heck, even if you're Christian, I think that you should always remember that. We use that as a lesson when we teach. But I think the real question is that if you're so passionate about that, like, is it wrong for Jesus to go ahead on the time of the Passover when everyone should be remembering what God did with Moses to get everybody out of Egypt? Is it wrong for him to switch the focus and put it all on him by saying, okay, this is my body and this is my blood of the new covenant that's been shed for you. Eat and drink and do this in remembrance of me. And you look up that word do, it's poiesis. It's the same word that the priests use for offering.
Correct?
Say it again.
Christ lived 33 years.
Yeah, that's what they traditionally say. But back to my point.
Years. So no, reason it's on the point. The reason I'm asking you, before he made that Last Supper, he had 32 years before that where he actually celebrated the Passover, correct?
Yeah, I would say so.
Okay, go ahead with your point.
Okay, so from there, this is what he says for this is so from there, this is what he says for us to do, because Jesus is about to go ahead and do something for us that he wants us to remember. And that word remember in the Greek is anamnesis. And the type of remembrance it's talking about is not like something that you recall in your mind, but something that you put into yourself as putting yourself back in that experience when it happened.
During the time of Passover, do you do that?
Yeah, during the time of Passover, I do that. Every time I take the bread and I take the blood, I do that.
I'm talking about Easter, and I'm not talking about the once a month tradition. I'm talking about during the time of Passover when Christ actually did that. Are you doing that during the time of Passover according to the Hebraic calendar?
Yes, and not only am I doing it according to the Hebraic calendar or whatever, I will also do it as Jesus said, as often as you do this, which goes to show that Jesus was not just limiting himself to some old covenant Hebraic calendar. Like this is the new covenant.
I'm sorry, man. Hey, man,
Okay,
I'm trying to come in.
Yeah, it's okay. I'm just trying to lay a point for you to examine. So this is what Jesus. So this is what Jesus is doing, and a part of the new covenant. He's laying something new for us to go into. Matter of fact, when you actually look into Luke 9, right, and you look at verse 28. It actually has Jesus and Moses and Elijah all talking. And this is what Luke says. Luke says in the Greek, like, Jesus was talking about how he was planning to make his exodus out of Jerusalem. He's planning to make his exodus out of Jerusalem. So this once again goes to show that whatever Moses did, that was great. But it seemed like Jesus, as a part of the new covenant, was trying to go ahead and do something new. And John knew that, because in Revelation chapter 11, he says that Jerusalem is spiritually Sodom and Egypt, right? Where our Lord was crucified, Jerusalem. And so you look at all that, and this is what Jesus wants us to remember, how he delivered us out of sin. He said, he who sins is a slave of what? Pharaoh. And he
Hey,
no, he said
brother,
sin.
That's not what that scripture say at all.
So what you're saying is that when it comes to, when us Christians practice the Eucharist, which I assume that you would do as well, because Jesus told us to do this, you're saying that it's not okay for us to reflect on what Jesus has done for us, no different than how Moses delivered the Israelites out of Egypt.
Moses didn't do it. Excuse my language. Moses didn't. Moses didn't do anything, brother. The Most High God delivered the children of Israel out. Talking about Revelations 11 and 8.
Man.
In the streets of the great city, which is spiritually called Sodom and Egypt, where also our Lord was crucified. Sam, the floor is yours.
Okay, cool. I want to share my screen real quick. Let me go ahead and share this screen.
Hey, brothers, we got about another 15 minutes, man, then we out of here.
Okay, cool. All right. Can you add the screen up there for me, bro?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Now, the first thing I want to deal with is this moral stuff, right? That moral law, ceremonial law, whatever the other laws that they name, comes from the 13th century, right? It comes from a philosopher. That's not biblical whatsoever. There's no distinctions made in the law. That's theological nonsense, first and foremost. Now, let me show you why. Let me prove that. Let me prove that through the etymology. When we look up the word precept, and this is the Webster's 1828, I believe, dictionary, right? The precept is or law, right? Or command, right? Intole, that's what we're dealing with, right? In a general sense, any commandment or order intended as an authoritative rule of action, but applied particularly to commands respecting what? Moral conduct. The 10 Commandments are so many precepts for the regulation of our moral conduct. Right? So now, those of you guys that know the Bible know that the 10 Commandments, the 603 commandments, is actually ordinances telling you how to keep those 10. Right? They are ordinances telling you how to love the Elohim, how to love your brother, how to not commit adultery, defining what adultery is, and according to these precepts. So the whole law is actually moral. So all that distinction with the moral and the ceremonial and all of this other kind of is absolutely nonsense, right? That's first and foremost. Second of all, what I wanted to get into is hermeneutics, how to properly interpret the Bible. Now, I didn't get this from the Hebrew roots community. I got this from the Christian community. I learned these precepts from Christians. I went to a Christian Bible college, right? Because Brother Matt made the statement that Sam, his argument is Hebrew roots. That's what he does, right? Now let's take a look at these rules, right? And if you have any book on scholarship, on etymologies, on doing word studies, which that's what etymology means, it's going back to the origins of the word. What they're going to tell you is that, lexicons is fine. As a matter of fact, I think it was James White just did a, was it James White? One of them famous apologists is advertising for logo software. And he said, put away your lexicons and your dictionaries and all of that stuff, because they're all abstract and vague. He actually said that. If I have the opportunity, I'll pull that up here. Now, he was just trying to get people to get that software. But this is a well-respected apologist in the community. Now, one of the major ways that if you go to Bible college, and I'm talking about a Christian one, Christian Bible college, or you go to some kind of course that teaches you on how to actually interpret the Bible, they're going to tell you defining the words are very important. The second thing that they're going to tell you is how the word is used is the best way of determining what the word actually means. Not going to what somebody else like Thayer said or Vine said or Driver and Briggs said, any of those guys. The best way of determining what a word means is its usage, one, context, two, and then you can get into your Thayers and your all of that. So with all of that being said, Brother Matt made a grave error there. And he said that the commandment in the Bible, in Tole, is not dealing with the law. Let me clarify what he said. He said it's not just dealing with the law of Moses. He actually did say that. He did say that at times it's dealing with the law of Moses. But one of the stages of interpreting the Bible is this one right here. This one that I just made big right here. What does this say? The rule of historical background. And what that means is when we apply the history to the text, we know for a fact through a biblical internal fact and an external historical fact that the first century apostles started, Christ himself and his apostles were all Torah observant folk, meaning that they kept Torah. They believed Torah. We got a confession of Paul, Acts 24:14, that according to the way of his ancestors, of his fathers, he subscribed to the law, right? Acts 24, and I think it's 14, somewhere around there, 12, 14. He gave his confession of faith, and he says that he lived and believed in and taught the way of his fathers, of his ancestors. And this is the reason why that Felix, who was familiar with the traditions, remember, and that's somewhere around there in between 21 and 24th chapter, Paul says, you know what, Felix, I'm glad it's you that I'm dealing with, that I have to go before. Why? Because you know the Hebrew customs and law, and you know, which the law is the custom, but you know that since you know these laws, then I can prove to you that I haven't broken any of these laws. Why did I say that? Because we know for a fact, then you got Acts 21 and 24, where James was making Paul make a confession of faith that he kept the Mosaic law, that he was keeping and teaching.
Can we read that, man?
Yes, Acts chapter number 24. 21 and verse number 24. Get ready to put this on the screen real quick, because there was a rumor going around while we're pulling this up. I'll give you the historical context. This is what you need to properly, and this is what not only Christian, but also some of our Hebrew brethren, they do not understand, because the Hebrew brethren say, oh, well, we don't need that. That's Greek philosophy, and that's nonsense and all of this. But it actually works, and it actually makes sense. It's actually what they use. It's not specific to the Bible. That's why it's called biblical hermeneutics. This is what they use to decipher and interpret all ancient texts, all of them, not just the Bible. All ancient texts, 19th century, 18th century, they started not listening to the church folk and said, we're going to apply the same principles that we do to Homer, Iliad, and all of these other ancient texts to the Bible. And they came up with these rules, right? So now let's take a historical context of the Bible. Now, this book of Acts, the 21st chapter, happened circa 58 AD. That would make that 28 years after the death, burial, and resurrection of Hamashiach. 28. Get that through your head. 28. So if the Ruach, which is they call the Holy Spirit, Holy Ghost, whatever, was going to reveal to them that the law is done away with, that we're no longer living by these standards, then I think it would have been revealed to them by then. And actually, Paul and James died shortly after that, circa 64 AD. So that was about 5 or 6 years before the end of Paul and James's life. Now, let's check this out here. Let's start at verse number 19 real quick. It says, and when he had saluted them, and by the way, real quick, none of the Christian apologists can answer this. This is the nail in the coffin for them, the nail. For you Hebrew folk out there, if you want to kill the nonsense, this is where you go at. It's the nail in the coffin for Pauline Christian apologists, right? And when he had saluted them, he declared particularly what things the Alahayim had wrought among the Goyim by his ministry. So Paul comes in bragging about the Gentiles being given the Ruach and all of this other good stuff. Now let's see what James does, right? And when they heard it, they glorified, that word, Greek word would be Kyrios, and said unto him, thou seest, brother, how many thousands of Yahudim there are which believe. So we know we're talking about believing Yahudim, believing Jews. And they are all zealous of the law. So now, Paul bragging about the Gentiles, James and the rest of the brothers changed the subject. Say, yeah, you know what? That's great. Woo, woo, woo. They've been grafted in. Whoop, 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 dee. But look, check this out. We got thousands. They changed the subject. They got thousands of Yahudim there are which believe, and they are all zealous for the law. Luke made it a point of putting this into the text, and this is written after the fact. You got to remember that as well, right? And they are informed of thee. What are they informed of thee? What is this rumor going around about Paul, saying that Paul is teaching, right? That thou teachest, Paul, all the Yahudim which are among the Goyim to forsake Moshe. And other translations, it specifically tells you the law of Moses. That you telling all the Gentiles, Paul, we hearing this rumor, Paul, that you teaching all the Yahudim, the Jews which are among the Goyim, the Gentiles, that they don't have to keep the law of Moses, that they don't have to circumcise their children, neither to walk after the customs. When you're talking about the custom, you're talking about the feast days, Shabbat, the dietary commandments, the new moons, all of that good stuff. You know, that's done away with. Hamashiach is here. This is what they were blaming Paul for teaching, this Christian doctrine. They were blaming Paul for teaching modern day Christian doctrine. Now let's see how they handled this. What is it therefore? The multitudes must need come together, for they will hear that you come. Paul, when they hear that you came, man, they all these zealous, these believing Jews that's zealous for the law, bro, they're gonna want to hear, you know, your response to these rumors that's going around. Do they? Therefore, this we say to thee, we have 4 men which have a vow on them. So James got folks in the temple making Nazirite vows according to the law of Moses, circa 60 AD. James, before Paul even got there, Paul came in when they were already inside of the temple, inside of it. And guess what? Guess what? You had to be keeping the law in order to be allowed inside the temple. Oh my goodness, y'all ain't getting it, right?
Read that again. Read that again.
Verse 23. Do therefore this we say unto thee. We have 4 men which have a vow on them. Now notice Paul ain't calling the shots here either. It's James. James is the head of the Kahal in Antioch in Jerusalem, and not Paul. Notice that. Take note of that. But then, like I said, he got four men, 4 disciples. So not only are they keeping the law themselves, but they're teaching these 4 men to keep the law as well, because they're in the temple and making vows, right? Now watch what he says, right? Take them take and purify thyself with them and be at charges with them. Go back to your book of Leviticus and Numbers, and it'll tell you about the Nazirite vow. that they may shave their heads, cut their hair off, and may know that all those things whereof they are informed of thee concerning thee are nothing. So these rumors that you're teaching that the law is done away with, that we can just do away with the Mosaic law because it's no longer in effect. Circumcision doesn't profit you nothing. The feast days and Sabbath and all of that other kind of stuff don't profit you nothing. He said, listen, do this so you can prove that those rumors are nothing. But watch this, watch it. But that thou thyself also walkest orderly. Now, when he's talking orderly, orderly means not only just keeping the law, like he just says, but also teaching the law. Because in the law, in the Tanakh, what is it? Isaiah, I believe it is 8:20. For if they speak against the law and the covenant, it is because there is no light in them, right? So in order, the concept of James and the rest of these law-abiding, zealous for the law Jews is that not only do you have to keep the law, but you're supposed to teach the law, even to your children and even to the Gentiles, right? So they want to make sure that Paul is doing this. Now let's see what happened, what Paul do. As touching the Gentiles which believe, we have written and concluded that they observed no such thing. Now, this is added in there to go back to Acts chapter number 15, where they were dealing with the circumcision. That's whether Gentiles had to be circumcised in order to be included in the kahal. Say that they keep themselves from things offered to idols. Well, wait a minute. I thought if you prayed over it, I thought Paul said, don't worry about it. Whatever is sold in the shambles, then you can eat it, whether it's sold to idols or not. But how do we have this apostolic commandment, this apostolic order from Peter, James, and John, the inner circle of the Hamashiach, giving Gentiles dietary laws? And from blood, you can't eat things with blood in it, and from things strangled, and from fornication, right? Then Paul took the men the next day, purifying himself with them. So Paul did this, intending to prove that he wasn't teaching against the law, nor was he, and that he himself was actually keeping the law. So now I've set the historical context. Give me about 2 more minutes and I'll be done. I set the historical context that these folks were actually keeping the law. If you read the writings of the church fathers like Jerome and his letter to Augustine in 404 AD, if you read I have it in here in my notes somewhere, the rise and fall of the Roman Empire, the historian who documented the history, the rise and decline, the decline and fall of the Roman Empire by historian Edward Gibbons, he absolutely confirms the fact that the whole first century Kahal were Judeo-Christians. That's where that term comes from. Judeo means that they were still keeping the law. The reason why they called it Judeo, and you'll read in this text that they had sects, that they were called a sect of Judaism. In other words, a part of Judaism. The only thing that separated them, according to Epiphanius and a couple of their other church fathers, was the fact that they believed in Hamashiach. The only difference between them, the first century believers that we're reading about in the Bible, in the New Testament, the only difference between them and the Yahudim that didn't believe, the Jews that didn't believe, was that they believed. So we have that here. One more thing here. Intellect. Now let's get into this word intellect. Now remember, you got to have this historical context in your mind when you're translating these words. What my brother did and what most Christian apologists do, Brother Matt did, is just totally disregard the historical context. He threw that out. He used his modern day Greek influence through the English mind to impose Christian dogmas and Christian misinterpretations on these concrete Hebrew words by these Hebrews that were zealous for the law. Now, you're not telling me that these Hebrews that's zealous for the law is going to tell you that a commandment is anything than that which was given to Moshe. You're not telling me that they believe that righteousness was anything other than keeping those commandments. And you're not telling me that they had a different definition from sin than that which is written in Torah. You're not telling me that. You can't. I mean, you would have to totally throw out the historical context, which puts you into the mind of the authors and their audience, which is a major part of interpretation. And this is why these guys have a problem interpreting the text. Now, check this out. This is that same Greek word. Remember, he said in Roman, in Revelations, that commandment wasn't talking about where it's keep the commandments of the Elohim plus their faith. He said that's not talking about the commandments of the Most High. Once again, John, a Hebrew in a Hebrew setting where the whole Hebrews and their Gentile converts are keeping the law. And I can prove that through First Clement. I can prove that not only through First Clement, but the Epistle of Barnabas and all of that, which it was included originally in the first century canon, which means these folks that we reading about held Clement and the Epistle of Barnabas as canon for them, as authoritative for them, right? So now, when we get into that entole, now watch this. Matthew 5:19. Heaven and earth shall pass away. I ain't gonna get into all of it because we running time, and I don't want to be on my soapbox and preaching, but I did want to get this out. Whosoever therefore shall break one of the least commandments, that's entole. And we know that Christ said, think not that I came to destroy the law or the prophets, is the verse before this. Think not that I came to destroy the law or the prophets. So the law and the prophets is the context. And here we find the Christ using entole. Let me tell you this. The Christ never, Yeshua HaMashiach, never used the word entole except to reference the law given to Moshe. Never did. Never did. Woo. So we got Matthew 15:3, but he answered and said unto them, why do you transgress the entole of Elohim, the commandments of God, by your tradition, the oral Torah? Remember in this text, they came to him and say, why don't your disciples wash their hands? Why don't they keep the traditions of the elders? They're going against our law. He said, you're using your law. And he's quoting actually Isaiah chapter number 29, where he says, in vain they do worship me, teaching for doctrines the commandments of men, just like Christianity, right? Honor thy father and thy mother. We know where this come from without a shadow of a doubt. Matthew 15:6. He shall be free. Thus have ye made the commandment of Elohim of none effect by your tradition. That's that word entole again. And he said unto him, why callest thou me good? There is none good but one, that is the Elohim. But thou, if thou wilt enter into life, keep the entoles, the commandments, right? Now, this is every time Hamashiach used this word. Now, we're going to see if he used it at any time to refer to anything other than the law of Moses, right? Law given to Moses. Master, which is the great commandment in the law? The great commandment entole in the law. This is Matthew 22:38. This is the first and great entole, right? So I'm not going to go through. You guys are welcome to go to your Blue Letter Bible, and you're going to see that every single time, not did the person that we're supposed to follow, did the example that we're supposed to follow, did he use the commandments outside of anything other than the law given to Moshe. Even right here in John 14, when he said, if you love me, keep my commandments. When we go back to the commandments that Hamashiach referred them back to commandments of the Elohim. What must I do to inherit eternal life? Keep the interlays of the Most High. And that's the commandments of Hamashiach. I rest my case.
All right. I'll give you
got it. I'd like to go ahead and respond.
Yeah. I'll give you the last 10 to 12 minutes before we get out of here, man. Floor is yours.
Got it. Thank you so much. Before I respond, I did just want to let everyone know is graciously as Sam Addison spoke, what Sam Addison will not tell you is that what he did was he laid out the exact same arguments that him and I had actually went through in earlier debates. And when I actually disproved him, he said nothing. And now what he's doing is he's actually taking these same exact arguments. And this is on my YouTube channel. G-Con has also spoke with him about these same exact arguments. Like, he's taking the same exact arguments and he's presenting them to you, the audience, who perhaps have not heard these things before. And he's saying it as if he has some newfound niche to, disprove anything that I've been saying. And so he basically made it really easy for me. And so I have all my notes up here. So all I have to do is just go through the stuff that I've been saying ever since. It's just going to be a rehash. And so here it goes. I only need a fraction of the time. First thing he did was he had said, you know what, we need to make sure that we understand, the words that are being used by the authors themselves. That's exactly what I've been saying throughout all my lessons and videos and things. And also, I've been saying that on this panel as well, when you rewind the tape. Like, that's all I've been saying. Now, when I end up using Thayers and things like that, I actually use the tools that are basically, obeying these type of hermeneutics. And that's the reason why you have them delving into these passages and digging out these verses, and all of a sudden they'll create a lexicon. Like, that's the reason why. But it's funny that he demonizes Thayers and he demonizes Brown, Javert, Briggs. You know what I'm saying? Now, he doesn't say anything against Strong's, because he doesn't want to eliminate all of his own arsenal. And he also demonizes Vines. But yet he doesn't demonize Webster, who's no different than a man, just like Thayers is. And so he's picking and choosing between his sources. I find that incredibly inconsistent. And this is the first time where me and him are talking that he's actually ever pulled out Webster's. I don't know why he's doing that. Maybe Thayers is now all of a sudden just not proving his doctrine anymore, so he has to move on to something else. So when he moves on to Webster's, he shows that Webster says, you know what, precepts just basically mean moral law, and therefore, all of the law is moral. And once again, I do believe he's wrong. He's wrong because not exactly everyone is always right all the time. The word precept, it's not referring to everything that's just always moral. The reason why is because, how am I trying to say this? Yes, that's all I was trying to say. When you looked at his definition there, it included the 10 Commandments. And because it included the 10 Commandments and included, all the law, as Webster said, that is the reason why he's saying all the law is moral. The issue is that the fourth commandment is not a moral law. It's just simply not. The first 9 are, which is the reason why you could find it before Exodus. You can find them all in Genesis. They're just moral stuff that people just know to make sure they don't do. Also, in the New Covenant, you don't see anyone saying, you know what, if you don't keep the Sabbath, you're going to hell. Not even in the book of Revelation, where it names all types of people that are outside the kingdom of God, whoremongers and liars and thieves. It doesn't say Sabbath breakers. And so that is the only one that's not mentioned as something that, you have to keep the Sabbath. Of all the churches that they wrote to, they never said that one. But the other 9, they're all throughout their epistles. Why? Because they're moral. The Sabbath was not. It's simply not. If he wants to contest me on that, he definitely can. Then he says that the types of laws, moral, civil, ceremonial, he said, that was a philosophical thing. But the thing is, I remember he said from his source, he said that it was Aquinas that basically made that category up. I think it's funny that he didn't say it this time. He just went to Webster or something like that. Once again, that's totally false. I've already shown in a lot of my videos, especially my Jesus and the Law of Moses video. You can look at that. There are all types of laws always in types and categories. For one, statute, law, commandment, precept, what else? Ordinance, right? Ordinance is a big one. These are all types of laws. Then after that, you got Jesus even naming types of laws. He says, listen, you guys ignore the weightier matters of the law. Oh, weightier, that's a type. So you could see that the Jews are already talking about their laws in types. And all of a sudden he says what? Judgment, mercy, and faith. Not sacrifice, ceremonial, and dietary. So that's another issue. Just look at how they're talking about these things. Now, another thing is he went to an old argument again in Acts chapter 21, and he basically said the same thing that, that basically I've already disproven. So let me go to Acts 21. Let me show it to you real quick. These are the common questions I keep asking him, and he just never says anything about it. When you read Acts 21, it ends up talking about, oh, look, do you see how thousands of Jews are zealous for the law? And he gets excited about that. And so it's like, okay, great. There are thousands of Jews that are zealous for the law. And then after that, he says, oh, wait, look, it says here, and they, now I want you to listen to this. It says, and they, now that's the Jews that are, that believe, right? This is the Jews that are zealous for the law. They, the Jews that are zealous for the law, are informed of you, Paul, that you teach all the Jews that are among the Gentiles to forsake Moses, saying that you shouldn't circumcise the children and you shouldn't follow after the customs. The question is, who informed these Jews that were zealous of the law? Who informed them? Where did this rumor come from? And he hates to try to answer that question, because if it does, there goes his whole argument. Now, I end up showing in Acts chapter 6 and 7, where you had Stephen, before he's being stoned, they actually end up making up a rumor on him. They say, oh, you know what? You're actually the one that's pushing that, that the law of Moses is going to be done away with and our temple is going to be burned. Now, I don't remember Stephen. I don't remember. Excuse me?
You said Stephen is pushing it?
No, I said the people that are accusing Stephen are pushing that. And the people that are accusing him are the people that stoned him. Who are the people that stoned him? The Pharisees, right? Of whom Paul was there. He was there. So that's what he's missing. So the Pharisees are spreading rumors about Paul that aren't true. When you look at Paul's writings, he's telling the Gentiles not to circumcise themselves. When he talks about the Jews and circumcision, he never says, don't circumcise yourself. No, but he does talk about how it's inferior. He does talk about how it's inferior in Romans 1 and 2. He also talks about how baptism is superior to circumcision in Colossians chapter 1 and 2, when he says that there is a circumcision made without hands. By the way, can someone mute their mic because it's making a zipping sound? Someone mute their mic. Thank you. So that's what you see in his epistles. And so that's what you see. And so if that is the case, then that means that the rumors are false. Now, his conclusion is, oh, we should circumcise. We should do this and that. But that goes against what Paul is telling the Gentiles not to do. And also, he's discouraging the Jews by showing them how superior baptism is to circumcision. And after that, in Romans, he says, well, you can circumcise yourself all you want. But if a uncircumcised person ends up keeping the law, just like you guys are, then what's the difference between you and them? And your circumcision doesn't mean anything. It's become uncircumcision. He never said, don't circumcise yourself. That's the issue. So he never says anything about that. Also, I remember one time he was constantly saying how, the circumcision does count for something, that we do need to do it. Then what do you do when he says circumcision is nothing and uncircumcision is nothing but keeping the commandments of God? And this is a part where he ends up saying the commandments of God are keeping the law of Moses and things like that, which is circumcision. But that contradicts what Paul just said about circumcision is nothing. So this is the reason why I keep saying, when you look at this word, entole, it literally does mean like a command given by a person, and that command can be whatever that person says. So I'm going to go to just
the law of circumcision represents the whole law.
Did you say you're asking me? Does the law of circumcision represent the whole law?
Yes.
I would definitely say no, because Jesus said that, hey, if you love your neighbor as yourself and you love God with all your heart, on these two things hang the whole law. And so circumcision was a part of there. I want to go to move on, continue real quick, just trying to hit everything he said twice as fast because I know we got to go. So then after that, let me show you just one example of how the word commandment does not mean always like the law of Moses, okay? So here it is. This is 1 Corinthians chapter 9, and I'm going to start at verse 14. This is what it says. In the same way, the Lord commanded those who proclaim the gospel should get their living by the gospel. I don't remember anywhere in the law of Moses where it says that if you preach the gospel, you should actually have your living by the gospel. I don't remember anywhere in the law of Moses where it says that you should preach the gospel. I don't remember it saying that anywhere. Now, that's just one. Now, I do have about 18 other verses that I can show that do the same thing, where Peter does it, John does it, Jesus himself especially does it, but I don't have time because I know that everyone's pressed and I got like the last minute. So then another thing, back to Acts 21, right? So another thing that he says is, look, you have Paul keeping the law, and he's being a Nazarite, right? He's taking a vow. But the thing is, in Acts 18, he cuts his hair. In Acts 21, he purifies himself. But it doesn't say how. When you read into the law, you don't just cut your hair. You have to throw it into the fire. Throwing it into the fire, of course, is once again a type of purification. So in Acts 18, if he cuts his hair, then that means that in Acts 21, he has to throw his hair into something. He has to finish the vow. So he throws his hair into the fire. That's a type of purifying yourself. Now, I could even go even further and just say, okay, well, let's just say Paul is purifying himself the same way that everybody else is. There's this priest there. He's giving an animal sacrifice for them, and that'll count as some type of purification. There's still an issue. Two things. One, Paul in 1 Corinthians 9, he says, look, when I'm around the Jews, I'm as a Jew. When I'm around the Gentiles, I'm as a Gentile. So at best, all you could say is that Paul, you could say, okay, he's keeping the law, but he's not doing it in such a way where it's like, this is part of the new covenant, this part of the gospel, this is what you're supposed to do for all time. No, it was situational based on his own words in 1 Corinthians 9. The second reason why it's not something that, we're to be doing is because in what it says in verse 25, it says, as touching the Gentiles, which believe, just like it said in verse 21, you have the Jews who believe. It says, and we have written and concluded that they should observe no such thing. What are these things? It's the things that Paul is doing, observing the law. It said you're not supposed to be doing that. That kind of sounds like the Galatians. And after that, it says, but they're supposed to go ahead and do these four things. What are those four things? Those are the four things that are found in Acts 15 when they're talking about what should we do to these Gentiles that are coming to the church. And what is it? You're supposed to keep from things offered to idols, which is like food and stuff, and from blood, which is in what? Genesis 9. That's not Mosaic law, but it made it into the Mosaic law. And from strangled, once again, that's not Mosaic law, but it made it into Mosaic law. And from fornication. You don't even see fornication in the old covenant. You see it in the new covenant, though. I find that interesting. So when you look at this stuff and break it down, that is the issue. And he doesn't end up saying anything about it. He just continues to go on and say, oh, look how wrong these Christians are. And look how Paul is keeping the law. But when you break it down, it just doesn't add up. Wow, when you break it down, it doesn't add up. Now, one last thing I did want to touch on is how he went to Matthew chapter 5, right? And he spoke about how Jesus was using this word commandments. And every time he used it, he ended up using it always referring to the law of Moses. Okay, there's a problem with that.
1 minute.
What'd you say?
1 minute.
Yeah, how convenient that Sam never got yelled at. But anyway, okay, I'll try my best. So this is what it says in Matthew 5, right? You look at Matthew 5, and it literally says, look, if you do not keep, if you make the least, if you break the least of these commandments, you will be called least in the kingdom. Okay, so there's a problem. It didn't say the commandments. It said these commandments. If you look at what these commandments are, what Jesus is talking about, that's talking about all the commandments that he gave earlier in the chapter. He started giving commandments and all kind of things that you cannot find in the law of Moses. And he said, if you don't do them, you're sinning. Or if you do against some of this stuff, you're sinning. Well, the biggest one is, he said, look, in the old covenant, if you commit adultery, you end up sinning. He said, but I say to you, if you look at a woman with lust, you committed adultery in the heart. Adultery in the heart is not a sin found in the old covenant. So he's talking about his own commandments when he says these commandments. Blessed are you, blessed are you. Matter of fact, in the beginning, he said he opened his mouth and taught them. And he was on a great mount. That sounds like Moses. And you open his mouth, right? A mouth was an authoritative thing, just like in Acts 15, where Peter opened his mouth and he spoke. And when he was done, everybody was silent when he spoke. Why? Because mouth is authority. So Jesus is talking about authority. And so every time you look at when Jesus talks, he'll say, look, if you don't obey these words of mine, I will liken you unto an unwise man. So he's being specific about his own words, just like in Matthew 5:19. If you break the least of these commandments, right? And you can look this up all the time. If you type in the quote, these words, Jesus was very specific about his words. He said, how can you call me Lord, Lord, and you don't do what I say? And then in John 13, he gives a new commandment, a new entole, right? I give to you. He said, love people how I loved you. That's not in the old covenant law of Moses. That's a new commandment, just as Jesus said. The old covenant says, love your neighbor as yourself. The new covenant says, Jesus says, love people how I love you. How you love yourself and how you love others and things like that. It's not the same as how Jesus loves you. That's why it's new. And so there it is, a new commandment, a new entole that goes totally against what Sam just got done saying and saying, well, every time that Jesus spoke, he ended up using the word entole and it offered to Moses. Well, what do you do with that? And like I said, because I'm pressed for time, I can't be exhaustive, unlike Sam. So I could have said more, but I hope I hit everything he said. Last but not least, after that, I'll wrap it up. If you go to Revelation 22, this is the biggest one of all. You know, because everyone likes Revelation 14:12. Look at Revelation 22. It says this. It says right here in verse, this is my last one. It says here, blessed are they which keep his commandments. I'm trying to find it. Here it is. Yep, here it is. Revelation 22:14. Blessed are they that do his commandments, that they may have the right to eternal life and may enter through the city and the gates of the city. Notice it said his commandments. Whose commandments is that? That's Jesus's commandments. Look at the verse prior. Who's speaking in the verse prior? Jesus is speaking. He says, I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. And then John points to him and say, blessed are they who do his commandments, right? Christ's actual commandments that he gave, like go into all the world, preach the gospel, baptize them in the name of Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. That's a commandment. I don't see that in the law of Moses. I don't even see the promise of getting the right to the tree of life and entering through the city in the old covenant. I don't see that. But when it comes to Jesus, what he says, that's what you get. Just like in the rich young ruler. He said, give up all you have, sell it to the poor, and you'll have treasure in heaven. And come and follow me. Like that was a commandment and a reward. That neither one of them that you find in the old covenant. You can't find the old covenant where it says follow Jesus. You can't find the old covenant where it says you go ahead and get into heaven. You can't find it. Not even Deuteronomy 18. And I would break that down too, but I already know I've gone way over of a minute of my time.
All right, man. So listen, I appreciate that what you said. I said you can have the last 10 or 12 minutes. It's been 19 minutes, brother. So I just want to let you know, I'll let you rock. So I don't want you to feel that way, brother. You understand?
Hey, God bless you. I thank you. I don't feel any kind of way. God bless you. That says a lot. I'm serious.
Yeah, man. But you said a couple of things, brother, about it don't say anything about fornication in the Old Testament. That's not true, brother. All right. Fornication is unillicit sex. You can find that in Leviticus chapter 19, where it talks about the flesh, not sleeping with your mother, not sleeping with your father, not sleeping with your sister, not sleeping with your auntie. All right. That's fornication, brother. Then you said that there's no going out and teaching the gospel, sharing our light. That's Isaiah chapter 60, right? That's also Isaiah chapter 49, verse 5 and 6. All right, so those things are in the Old Testament, brother. So I appreciate if you don't say that again. Use something else. All right, because that's not a true statement. Matt, are you there?
Oh, I'm definitely there, but I definitely disagree with you. Apart when it comes to the gospel, when it comes to the fornication, now I could kind of see what you mean. But I'm willing to be open on that one, only because the term is not there, but the concepts are. So we maybe perhaps we could kind of talk about that again sometime.
Well, it also talks about not having sex with animals. All right, no bestiality. You know what that is? That's fornication. Okay, so it is defined in the Torah. So you can't say that, brother, that it's not speaking about those things. It's a false statement. Now let's deal with the one that you said is definitely not there. That is not. We're not taught to teach the gospel in the Old Testament. That's what you said, right? Not to go out and teach the gospel. That's not in the Old Testament. That's what you said, right? Matt, you there?
Yeah, yes, that's correct. Then I think I know where you're about to go, but it's okay.
All right, yeah. So this is Isaiah. I just told you I was going to go. This is Isaiah chapter 49, verse 5 and 6. This is what it says. Isaiah 49, 5 and 6. Now saith the Most High that formed me from the womb to be his servant, to bring Jacob again to him, though Israel be not gathered yet, shall I be glorious in the eyes of the Lord, and my power shall be my strength. Verse 6. And he said, it is a light thing that thou shouldest be my servant to raise up the tribes of Jacob and to restore the preserved of Israel. I will also give thee for a light to the Gentiles, that thou mayest be my salvation unto the end. So the gospel being that bearer of light, showing forth that example, going out to restore the preserved of Israel, awaken those who are not yielding to the gospel itself. This is in the Old Testament. You also see this in Isaiah chapter 48 and 20. It says what? Go ye forth of Babylon, flee ye from the Chaldeans, and with a voice of singing declare ye this, tell this, utter it even to the ends of the earth, saying yea, the Most High, I'm going to read it as it's written, the Lord have redeemed his servant Jacob. It's there. All right. When you go to Isaiah chapter 60, what does it say there? Isaiah chapter 60. Arise, shine, for thy light is come, and the glory of the Lord is risen upon thee. For behold, darkness shall cover the earth, and gross darken the people. But the Lord shall arise upon thee, who? The children of Israel, and his glory shall be seen upon thee, who? The children of Israel. Verse 3. And the Gentiles shall come to thy light. You understand? When you go into Micah, when you go to Zechariah chapter 8, verse 20, what do it say here? What do it say in Zechariah chapter? I'm showing you multiple places of preaching the gospel, going out and being a bearer of light. Zechariah 8 and 20. Thus said the Lord of hosts, it shall yet come to pass that there shall come people and the inhabitants of many cities, verse 21, and the inhabitants of one city shall go to another, saying, let us go speedily to pray before the Lord and to seek the Lord of hosts. I will go also. Yea, many people and strong nations shall come to seek the Lord of hosts in Jerusalem and to pray before the Lord. Verse 23, thus saith the Lord of hosts, in those days it shall come to pass that 10 men shall take hold out of all languages of the nations, even shall take hold of the skirt of him that is a Jew, saying, we will go with you, for we have heard that God is with you. So listen, brother, this gospel and this bearer of light that is to be shined to the rest of the world coming from the Hebrew Israelites is something that is being attested to in the Old Testament as well. You have to change that statement, Sam. I mean, Matt, are you there, Matt?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah.
I mean, it's right there, brother. You understand? So you can't make that statement. Now, I pray that this touch your spirit so you leave with a different narrative, man. Don't wake up tomorrow with that same statement, because it's here in the scriptures. I showed you Isaiah chapter 49 and 5 and 6. I showed you Isaiah chapter 60, right? 1 through 5. I showed you Zechariah chapter 8, verse 20 through 23, right? Isaiah chapter 48, verse 20, right? It's there. It's in a multitude of other places too, right? In the Old Testament, that we are to be that bearer of light. Matter of fact, let me give you one more. This is Micah 4 and 1. Check this out. Let me give you one more. Micah chapter 4, verse 1. And it reads, but in the last days, Brother Matt, it shall come to pass that the mountain of the house of the Lord shall be established, and in the tops of the mountains, and it shall be exalted above the hills, and people shall flow into it. And many nations shall come and say, come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob, and he will teach us of his ways, and we will walk in his path. For the law shall go forth of Zion, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. So again, we have people flowing into this example, this bearer of light from the children of Israel that is supposed to be shined upon to the rest of the world. So you can't say that, Matt. You can't say that. All right. So we see multiple examples of the children of Israel holding to their rightful position to bear light to the rest of the world. That's why it's imperative that it's to the Jew first, then to the Gentile. Why? Because the Jews, the teachers, have to get themselves together so they can be that bearer of light to the rest of the world, man. This is why the world is in chaos, because the teachers are in chaos. They're not in their rightful position. They're not doing what they're supposed to do, which is to show that light that Christ gave them and show the world Christ, brother. This is what we're supposed to do. This is our job, a kingdom of priests and kings. You understand? So we've been on 3 hours and 22 minutes, and I pray everyone was edified and enjoyed this recap. I look forward to building with the brothers further. You know, we'll be able to talk more, Matt, and set up more opportunities. This is just the beginning, brother. And I want that narrative and that stereotype to change about the Hebrew Israelites, man. We're about order. We're about discipline. We're not about chaos. We're not about killing anyone. We love our people, man. You understand? We want our people to do better morally, right? Civilly. We want brothers to be better fathers, sisters to be better mothers, right? Children to be better children, and respectful unto their parents, man. We want people to have better health, better mental health, better physical health, right? We are concerned about all these things, and we believe wholeheartedly that all of the answers are right here in this book. This is what we believe, right? So with that, man, I want to say, may the Most High continue to bless you all, and may he rain down protection upon you all. because it's not just against the Hebrew Israelites that they're coming against. If you're a black Christian, you're in trouble too. All right, because it ain't gonna matter at the end of the day. So we need to band together as a people, right? And share that light that Christ wants us to share to the rest of the world, which is love, order, and obedience. All right, and with that we say shalom, peace and blessings to you all.